I'd like to call this meeting to order. A regular meeting of the Village Board on Monday, November 16th at 7 p.m. in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom, and also could be accessed through the WebEx platform. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all Village Board members present except for Trustee Wing, who perhaps will be joining us shortly. At this time, I'll ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is President's Report. Just a couple things to report tonight. First item is an appreciation for all of those that participated, planned, and helped to make the event this past weekend. Very joyous for the neighborhoods, the traveling Christmas parade throughout the different neighborhoods in Germantown. It came to our neighborhood at about 3:30, I think. A lot of people standing on the corners at the route. A lot of kids waving to Santa. So all in all, I think it was a successful event. So thanks for all who participated and planned it, and for once again bringing the holiday spirit and launching the holidays in Germantown. Thank you very much. The next item I have to bring is more of a informational. We do have a person that was a past member of this village board and is also a current supervisor for the county, who is currently struggling with COVID in the hospital currently. Soon possibly on a ventilator. Peter Sorcy, we know him, everyone here knows him, and he is having some difficulty with managing his COVID illness right now. So please keep him in your prayers, keep him in your thoughts. A lot of people do know who he is here and have worked with him in the past, so please remember him as you go forward, that he is out there struggling. That's all I have for President's Report. Announcements of forthcoming events, public interest, committee and department reports would be next. We'll do committee reports with committee chairs with Trustee Zabel.
General Government and Finance met earlier tonight, and we will meet again on the third Monday in December at 6 p.m. in this room. I forgot the date already. December 21st.
God dang.
Thank you. Trustee Miller.
Public Safety will meet on Monday, December 7th at 6 p.m. in this boardroom.
Thank you. Trustee Kaminsky.
Public Works will meet in this boardroom at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, December 1st.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? Then the next item we have under this is the election update. Village Clerk.
Thank you. Again, I just wanted to thank the teams of election officials, village employees that worked on the November 3rd election. All village departments and employees assisted in some capacity, and thank you to them. And also thank you to the poll locations, Bethlehem Lutheran School, American Legion, Life Church, and Crossway Church. There were 13,788 voters at the November 3rd election. 9,803 cast absentee ballots.
Oh.
Yeah, so just to give you an idea, that's how many absentee ballots were counted. The voter turnout was 95%. The village estimated voting population is 15,637, and we are at 15,135 registered voters. So just good job, Village of Germantown. So, in comparison, in 2016, there were 4,622 absentees, a 91% voter turnout, for a total of 12,389 voted at that election. The next election, that notice has been posted, will be published this week, and that is on April 6th, 2021. The candidate paperwork is available under the candidate information on the village website. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
yep, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is citizen input and public appearance on items not subject to a public hearing. There's one public hearing on tonight's agenda. Trustee Baum?
Yes, a couple of issues that have been brought to my attention by residents this past couple of weeks. One is a non-compliant business on Freistadt Road. It's a landscaping business that doesn't have a permit to operate there. I would like to ask the director of planning to look into that. And was that,
Yeah, it's already on the list.
and what came of that?
Just said it was there. Yeah, he's aware of it. They've had filed the complaints. The complaints have been filed, and he's working with the person that's there. I don't remember his answer on the end of the chart, but he's aware of the one on Freistadt.
The second one that's been brought to my attention is noise coming out of business property. The residents on Forest Drive are excessive noise. Look into those two issues.
Okay. All right, citizen input and public appearance. Does anyone else like to come forward for citizen input or public appearance? If you're willing to do so, I would ask you to come to the podium and state your name and your address for the record, or make the person that is in charge of the WebEx, and notify them that you'd wish to say something during this portion of the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to come forward? Sir, I need you to come to the podium, though, please, and state your name and your address for the record.
Sure, but I want to say something first. I'm dealing with Retzloff with a problem on Freistadt Road.
You gotta come up there and say it, so everybody can hear you.
My name is Bruce Bernardi. I live at 13645 Freistadt Road. The landscaping person that you brought up, Mr. Baum, is at 13537 Freistadt Road, running a landscaping business. He's been there for about 12 years. That's when he purchased the property. His business has grown from smaller to now. He probably has a minimum of anywhere between 10 and 15 employees. There's at least, skid loaders, graders, dump trucks, what have you. He has salt storage, he has bark storage, he has, I've talked to the fire chief, he's burning, like right now, cleanup, fall cleanup, not only leaves, trees, roots that have been, stuff just festers after a while. In the landscaping stuff that he's bringing back, it's not only burnable stuff, it's plastic lawn edging, everything. I mean, I could have a list a mile long. So,
I've talked to your wife a couple of times now, and what I understand from trustee Zabel is the GGF is monitoring it
Yeah.
on a monthly basis? Monthly basis. I am asking the Director of Planning to look into it, and our village administrator's aware of it now.
okay, we
So-
started with Retzloff on this.
And now we're bringing everybody to bear on it.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right.
Oh, excuse me. As long as he's,
Trustee Kaminsky.
as long as Mr. Barari's still up there, I live in the neighborhood too.
Yep.
And you're right, it's been there for a long time, and it never, it used to be a lot quieter.
Yes.
And I know that the owner used to live on the property. And I don't know if he still lives on the property.
No, all gone. It's all been sold.
Okay,
My original land belonged to that farm. Okay, when the farm was sold, I bought the 40 acres, whatever,
Right.
in 91. The house, the barn, and 4 acres was sold separate. 35 acres was sold to MMSD. It's in the
Right,
Conservancy. There's other issues there. without getting too far into it, this person has pushed waste over the line into MMS Diesel
So
property.
is Mr. Belke the owner of it now?
Yes,
But he's been the owner of it for quite some time.
about 12 years.
But I'm only going to suggest, he's claiming that this is, he's living on the property. My understanding
yeah.
was he was
He's-
married and moved to Mequon.
He was never
a few years ago.
married. He's not living on the property.
Yeah.
He did move to Mequon. That ended. Now he owns a house in Colgate.
Okay, but he's not on the property.
Does not
He's
live on the
trying to
property.
say it's a home-based business.
Employees are there.
So our main concern is it's zoned RS2, which I understand is according to the paperwork that I got from Retzloff, is, you have to live on the property to run the business. Maybe 1 or 2 employees, kind of an inside deal, maybe a small carpenter, but he's way beyond his zoning.
Yeah, I know what that
The
is.
village administrator has some information to share.
Yeah, I can just provide some details. There was, the village did issue a code violation notice on August 1st, and then a citation was issued, or 2 citations were issued on August 24th. One for filling without an erosion control permit, and a second one for running a non-compliant business in an RS2 district. The owner has submitted applications for home occupation within a business, a CUP for that, and has submitted an application for an erosion control permit, and both of those requests are currently under review.
I'm sorry.
Another issue that I am aware of is they're encroaching on your property. Is that true?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
but, I mean, you'd have to see what's all going on. As
Okay.
far as him dumping stuff on my property, no. But the citation or whatever that Retzloff explained to me, what entailed was no more bringing stuff in and dumping. They're bringing stuff in, and that's continuing. My understanding is that the village, or Retzloff, Mr. Retzloff, has sent letters and so forth to him with no response. That was my last response to Lori in the planning department.
And I believe it was relatively recently that that the applications were submitted, and they are under review. So there was a compliance date for the violation notices of September 31st.
Well, this started back on August, when this all started to hit the fan. And he was supposed to have something back to Jeff Retzloff by 8/31, and nothing.
And we'll follow up more. That's the status as of now, but we'll follow up further, and I can get back to you.
Before any decision is made on this, I would certainly like to know.
Yep, I
It would
understand.
be before Plan Commission. All right, thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that'd like to come forward for citizen input or public appearance at this time? No one else? Then we can go on to consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve items A through I on the consent agenda as presented.
Motion made and seconded to approve consent agenda items A through I. Any discussion on that motion to approve? Trustee Baum.
I'd like to pull item G.
Okay. Any other discussion? No other discussion? Then we'll vote, roll call vote on consent agenda A through I minus item G, which is pulled for further discussion.
Trustee Baum?
Aye.
Trustee Myers?
Aye.
Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Pieper? Aye. Trustee Wing? Trustee Zabel?
Aye.
President Walter?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, item G, Resolution 61-2020, 2021 Wachtell Arboricultural Contract in the amount not to exceed $15,000.
I simply have a conflict of interest, and I do not want to vote on it.
Okay.
Move approval of contract 61, 2020.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. No discussion? We'll do roll call vote.
Trustee Zabel?
Aye.
Trustee Myers?
Aye.
Trustee Baum?
Abstain.
Oh, sorry. Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Pieper? Aye. Trustee Wing? President Walter?
Aye. Okay, takes care of all items listed under consent agenda. Next item on the agenda is public hearing, starting with public hearing item A, 2021 Village of Germantown Budget and 2020 Tax Levy. Before we open the public hearing, I'll turn the meeting over to our Finance Director, Kim Rath, to give us any background information and update as to where the budget is. Director Rath.
The budget as presented for 2021 includes all funds of the village, the general fund, the debt service, special revenue funds, which include the K-9, senior van, police asset forfeiture, recreation facility fees, honor guard, historic preservation, and library board accounts. It includes impact fees, which are police, fire, library, park and rec, and water, capital project funds, including the TIDS, 6, 7, and 8, utilities, water and wastewater, as well as health and dental. The levy proposed for 2021 is $13,669,201. It's broken up into two parts. One is general fund operations, which is $10,456,573. Debt service, $3,212,628. The tax rate is $4.96. That's an increase of 27.7 cents, about 28 cents per thousand, and an increase of 5.92%. The exact ratio that we're working with now is still estimated. We don't have the manufacturing from the state finalized as yet. The ratio is expected to be 98.8%.
Okay. Thank you.
Packet also, there is a breakdown. It's a It's just the PDF properties, and it gives you some detail of the actual property tax levy. The general fund that revenues, our largest source is the general fund property tax. Expenses is police, fire, and DPW expenses, as well as our debt service. So there's a lot of information in the packet to go look through for the public and for the board.
Okay. Thank you. Then I would open this public hearing by hereby stating that the residents and taxpayers of the Village of Germantown, please note that a public hearing on the proposed 2021 budget will be held at 7 p.m. on November 16th at the Germantown Village Hall located on Mequon Road in Germantown. This is a proposed budget. The final levy amount may increase or decrease depending on the majority vote of the board members at the meeting. And detail of the budget can be found either at the Germantown Village Finance Office or on the village website. Is there anyone wishing to come forward at this time to speak for or against the proposed 2021 budget from the general fund? Anyone wishing to come forward to speak for or against the general fund budget? Anyone WebEx? No? One last time, is there anyone wishing to come forward to speak for or against the 2021 proposed budget? All right. Then this public hearing is now closed. That takes care of all public hearings on tonight's agenda, which then takes us to new business. We have been requested for a motion to move new business item F up to the top so that we can take care of it first. Could I get a
Motion to move item F to the beginning.
Second.
motion made and seconded? Any discussion on the motion to move item F as first under new business? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. So item F is VFW Post 9202, a waived temporary use permit fee to sell Christmas trees and wreaths in parking lot located at West 156, North 9666 Pilgrim Road, Hillcrest Center, on November 18th through December 24th.
Move approval.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to approve the waiving of the temporary use permit fee. I'm going to turn the meeting over for some points and information to Steve Kreklow.
Thank you. Just a couple of pieces of information to pass on to the board. One, this request did come through, and we did place it on the agenda. It is something that does cause some concern from a legal perspective for the village in terms of waiving the fees. And generally, and our village attorney could speak to this much more eloquently than I could, but generally, it's something that we recommend against. And the village has set up a more complex process to reimburse organizations that where it's deemed beneficial to the overall community. And I guess, having said that, I also did receive a call today from a Germantown resident who wished to remain anonymous, who actually offered to pay this fee on behalf of the VFW. So that would, I guess, make that issue of waiving the fee moot if the village board would like to allow that resident to make that contribution in lieu of the fee. That would resolve the issue of not having to work through those legal concerns.
What is the actual fee? How much is it?
It's $210.
What's the legal issue?
Village Attorney.
Legal issue is the same issue that existed when we adopted the policy for the public grant that we use otherwise, which is that whenever we establish fees, those fees are designed to recoup actual costs that we are having to undergo. And no more, maybe less if we decide on a policy basis that we want it to be less. That's the way the law is written. Where we waive fees without any sort of standard, any process, you run into potential issues with equal protection claims under the Constitution. You are giving them something that I am otherwise not entitled to for some basis that just doesn't make any sense. That's why we adopted the policy a number of years ago to effectively provide a grant to individuals who had to pay those fees because that process, theoretically, obviously, takes some of that subjective question out of the mix. We have standards. Do they meet the standards or not? If so, they're able to get the grant. Now, the problem with that is when we adopted that policy, this board made a conscious decision that we excluded certain fees from even being considered in that. Those included building inspection fees, zoning fees, and the third one that I'm forgetting off the top of my head now. But there were three fees that we expressly said we're just not even going to provide a grant for because it does recoup our costs in terms of advertising for public hearings and all of those types of things. And so that's kind of where we're at. That's the legal issue. I do understand that we've approved this previously in the past. It's something that quite honestly escaped my attention in the past years, but in light of the citizen donation, I'm not sure that any action needs to be taken at this point.
Board?
So
Trustee Ball.
what, can I ask for a grant to be substituted, or can I just throw this and let the citizen?
Correct. I mean, we have talked with the representatives of the VFW. I say we, this was a conversation that Steve just had with them. I wasn't directly involved, but I did overhear it, about methods that for next year they may be able to seek to have that fee paid that would not rely on the public grant for which they aren't eligible by the policy. But at least for this year, I think you would just rely on that citizen donation and and leave it at that.
So table this, take no action on it.
Just withdraw the motion.
Correct. Either way.
I don't have a problem doing that.
So all the previous years that this was done, for as long as I can remember and been on this board, somehow we were against what can be done in regards to granting a waiver for the fees. I mean, I've been on the board since 2007, and I think we've done this every year
Yeah,
since
right.
I can
correct.
remember.
Right. So obviously, number one, you predate me. And so there were years where we didn't even have that policy that was put in place. And then the second part of it was, quite honestly, I never put two and two together that the special use permit was a zoning permit. This, to me, is just a sales permit that we were just approving, and so it wasn't until this year when somebody said, oh, and they've got that zoning thing, and it was like, oh, well, our policy doesn't allow that. So it was an oversight on my part, on the rest of the staff's part, in terms of approving that previously, but, certainly if we wanted to look at changing the policy, we could do that too, to address some of those other fees that we excluded. But that's how we got where we're at.
Haven't we also then waived the fee or permit fee for the Kiwanis for Fireman's Park for 4th of July events?
It's not a zoning permit.
Right.
That's the difference. Okay.
They applied for a grant,
Correct.
so they initially pay it, like the grant.
Can they do that going forward?
Not under our current policy.
There's other ways. They can request funds. Okay, so that takes care of that first new business item. Chris, thank you for coming.
You understand what's happening, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right, then thank you, Chris. That then takes us to new business item A, Resolution 63-2020, resolution approving the 2021 village budget.
Move with the minutes.
Motion made and seconded, discussion. We do have a document in front of us, Resolution 61, I'm sorry, 61?
Yeah. 63, 2020.
Yeah, 63, 2020, approving the 2020 budget. It's got some information in regards to the tax levy, reducing the levy if so chosen, what the current levy is, and what its impact is to households. Trustee Miller.
Yeah, in the letter that we received today from the village administrator, he talks about the asphalt paving, and to your point, President Walter, it looks like this is increasing and not being utilized in the year that we've levied it. And there is a recommendation in there to reduce it by $50,000 to $100,000, or could be reduced by $50,000 to $100,000. And I guess I need a little bit more information from Public Works, whether we can use this, if we should reduce it a little bit, what we should consider on this.
I'd like to have anybody from Public Works.
I can begin.
There's Larry.
If you'd like, Scott Anderson, the superintendent of the Highways Division, is not, he's actually on vacation today, not here. We did talk about this on Friday, and the Public Works Director is here and can help answer those questions as well. But that is, it is an account that the village board has increased over the years to try to address some of the paving issues. It's gone up from $150,000, I believe, in 2013 to over $400,000. There has been an accumulation of a balance that could be used for paving projects. At the beginning of 2020, that balance was over $1 million. And we did not, if you recall, when COVID came up and we were looking at ways of addressing this year's budget issues, we put the seal coating and crack filling project on hold to determine, so if we needed those funds to avoid running a budget deficit. So those have not been spent, and that's about $350,000. So there is a significant balance. The highway superintendent who's new and transitioning into that position has also been talking with the Public Works Director and would like to work with some of our engineering staff on better coordinating those dollars with the paving program, and believes that there may be some efficiency there. So while it's one of those things, I think you can never have too much money for paving or for infrastructure work because of the balances, because of what historical expenses would be. If the village board is looking to reduce the budget, that would be the area that I would look at, and I think it would be workable within a range of $50,000 to $100,000.
Mr. President?
Trustee Zabel.
One of the reasons we started this was to try to get away from borrowing
Right.
the 1.5. So we kept trying to bring this dollar amount up and up so that at some point in time, we reduces the borrowing and we have the money as a part of our normal tax roll. So instead of having that 1.5 that you borrow every year, you might be able to get that down to 1.2 or down to $1 million and maybe down to 700 and
Right.
slowly but surely work it back, because if interest rates do start to go up, that's going to be more of affected on your, like, our debt service this year is 325,000. And you start to try to whittle that back. So the reason, as a matter of fact, I think at the last meeting, when we found out we got additional money from the county to do Freistadt and Goldendale, didn't we put it in the highway budget numbers so that we had money to do additional major roads, talking about maybe doing Division Road, doing Country Air, doing some of the other places out there that we sort of been putting out instead of saving that money for a future road. So to reduce this, I would say not. If you want to do, I would reduce the amount of dollars that you're going to be borrowing this year and have it be less coming out, even though this is probably still a good year to borrow money. But I would not reduce it within the budget.
I tend to agree with that. Let's take away from the borrowing rather than the proposed amount here. The second question as a follow-up, though, is what is the projected impact that COVID has had on our budget in 2020? Do we have to reduce anything, or do we have to worry about anything?
At this point, our budget is looking better, but I don't think that we'll know until we really get to year-end close and see what the last few months of the year look like to determine if we'll have to hold on to these funds. So the way we left it, and I think one of the reasons this particular account made sense, there were also some mowers that were involved and things that when we get to year-end close, if we're not running a budget deficit, we could carry that money forward and increase the amount of work being done in those areas in 2021. But if we are running a deficit, then we could basically lapse those funds to the bottom line so that we can avoid running a budget deficit for the year. But I don't have updated numbers. At the beginning of the year, or the first quarter of the year, we were projecting anywhere from a $500,000 to $1 million deficit, and I think it's much lower than that if there is going to be one at all. But we really need the last quarter's revenue numbers before we can give you a final answer.
Okay, thank you.
So on a lot of the information that we've got in regards to the increase in the levy, a large percentage of that has been through debt service. So with that then, being you've got $1,070,000 in balance, why wouldn't you take the million and put it to offset the $1.5 million, so you're only doing 500,000 for asphalt pavement on the borrowing, and take the 70 and reduce the 150 down to 80, and call it a day? Because now you're taking the reserve that's been built up, which that bothers me, that it's over $1 million, and using it not only for the impact of next year's levy increase, but also for this year at the same time.
Just if I could make sure I understand the question before I respond. So you would use the existing balance within the account to reduce borrowing for 2021?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think that's a very, there's nothing from a fiscal responsibility perspective wrong with doing that. The one thing that I would say is that would not impact the property tax levy for the 2021 budget.
No.
The debt service, that you wouldn't see the benefit of that from a property tax perspective until 2022.
Correct.
And I also see as a Public Works Director is coming up that some of that $1 million in balance, as that has built up over the years, is now set aside for some other road projects that are in the planning phases. And I think he'll comment on what those are.
Good evening. Kim, your $1 million, isn't that part of remainder of 2020's paving program yet, which has not been totally invoiced out?
The $1 million that's in the budget currently is made up of $483,000 of budget for 2020, plus a carryover of $588,000 that we're using for road projects. So the only excess you truly have when you're looking at that $1 million is above what's not spent, that 588, because it's already been projected to be used. We were supposed to use it this year, but you had those two roads that were put off due to a couple of reasons.
Right, the Century Lane and Lovers Lane project, because we need to acquire right-of-way.
Actually, those dollars, if the year would end the way it was, the way it is now without making changes, we'd be carrying over 588,000 is already an earmark, so the only other dollars you'd have to play with that's new is another $400,000 or $500,000 that's in there. That's what's left over that they didn't use for asphalt paving, which I would assume is also going to be
Which
happening
the
next year.
project was
asphalt,
not,
but
that project was not final invoiced yet,
Right.
so there is some money to be spent on that project
Yes.
yet. So the number of $1,070,000 is a little misleading, is what I wanted to point out.
It is misleading.
I think that's why we have, when you have the budget, I did show the carryover amount and the actual budget amount in those budget figures. So and I think even on the monthly capital projects report that we use at GGF, we always show that 588 is coming from general fund. It's just really misleading because it wasn't used this year like it was supposed to. And of the original $483,000, they haven't spent any of that either. So when you're looking at that bottom line for the revenue and expenses through October, that's assuming that $1 million is still in there. That's actually not. It's not revenue we'd be using because we've somewhat got it half earmarked. Half of that money is already plugged into one of Larry's projects.
And what I've been trying to do over the last 5 years of my term here is through the levy paving program money, not the borrowed money, but the levy money, was to build up a bit of a war chest, if you want to call it. Someone like Trustee Zabel was saying, get off of the borrowing all the time. I was trying to build up for specific projects, like Division Road. I would like to get that done as soon as we can. We just had it estimated by Grave. It's a $1.2 million project. So if we would do that in 1 year of the borrowed paving money, that takes up, what, 80%, 85% of that year's paving program. But if we could save through, cost savings through projects of the general levy paving money, we could build that up and get more roads done and a bigger project done.
And I guess if I could, that is the $50,000 or $100,000. That's the amount that in excess of what we need for those ongoing purposes that we've been setting aside each year to build up a balance for projects. And the money that's in the current balance is planned for other projects. But if you're looking at the 2021 budget, you could reduce the amount by $50,000 to $100,000. It would mean that we're not contributing to that war chest next year, but it wouldn't have an impact on our regular asphalt maintenance projects. I hope I explained that a little bit better, but.
No, I'm lost.
You're lost in the carryover.
So I've got $1,070,000, if I may, Mr. President.
Yes, Trustee Ball.
I've got $1,070,000 carried over that's already to be spent on roads. In the budget for this year, I'm putting another $1.5 million
Plus,
that I'm borrowing.
right?
So I got $2.5 million plus.
Not all of that's road. A lot, the thing that we keep forgetting is what you forgot this year, you did not do any trash sealing or seal coating, because you took it out of the budget to cover your, we didn't have enough money to do culvert. We had funds in which to use. Next year, you're gonna have all the roads you should have done this year, plus whatever the roads you have coming up in 2021. So to try to catch up, once you forget a year, now you're behind. Now you gotta look at what you do and what you need to catch yourself again and get caught up to where you wanna be.
But this year being an exceptional year with the COVID, I think we did what we had to do, and by not doing that, it allowed us to get through the year.
Right, well, we may have to use some of that money in case we're not, if we're negative going at the end of the year, you have to use some of that money to cover those loss.
Some of the $1,070,000.
Right, because that's what it was set aside for. We didn't do it because we wanted to make sure we had the money to cover other budgets. So if we do run negative, this is now looking at the numbers, that we're going to be close. But if indeed we are negative, you got to find where the money is in the budget to cover those losses.
The premise is that it would take it from the $1,070,000 and use some of that.
It would take part of the 400 and some that we had sitting in the highway for seal coating and whatever to cover it, yeah.
250.
So if it would have been a normal year, Trustee Baum, you would have taken the $1,070,000 and back out the $580,000 if the road project would have been done? Back out the $400,000 that was in general levy fund for crack sealing and seal coating? That difference is what is actually left in the paving program. Am I right, Kim? Can you look at it that way if you want to do a...
Told you this isn't.
Trustee Wing?
Yeah, I'm just gonna take it up a little.
You gave me the broken one this week.
I don't have any.
Thanks a lot.
I don't have any.
I'll share. Okay.
We got a new committee that's gonna be working on that. Not yet.
Yeah, it's coming possibly.
from Ted. Okay, just a little bit different direction. What surprises me about this, and Kim, you can help me with this. You know, I'll have residents come to me and say, you know, I thought Walker put a cap on taxes. Why are our taxes going up? And I have to respond. We're raising taxes, we're raising the levy 6%. 6% significant. An example is we just gave a raise to the Public Works Department employees of 1.58%. Well, if things around you, groceries are more expensive, if things are going up and your wages around 1.5% to 2%, these are burdens on our families. I'm not saying that I want us to vote this down. We do need the money. But it bothers me that we've taxed to the max for 2 years in a row, according to the formula. What's interesting in the formula is it allows you to increase taxes based on growth, which, if you think about it, makes sense. If 20 homes are built and they add value to your community, the state wants us to be able to add a levy because those homes need police service, those need fire service, they have roads that need to be plowed. and we increase the levy, and those houses end up, are new payers into the system. So they offset the increase. But in our case, we had no increase in assessed value outside the TIF. Is that correct, Kim? No, I know, but our assessed value didn't seem to go up.
3%.
The assessed value went up 3%. Okay. When we're looking at adding the TIF districts, how that portion of general levy increase for net new construction of 323,000, how much of that is from TIF? Yeah. From what I look at it, it's the significant majority of it. When it comes to our growth with TIF, we have growth, but we have very little growth without the TIF. So this growth here that we're adding 323,000, I would really be interested to know how much of that is from the TIF. Because see, the problem there is the TIF has growth, and we use the formula to raise the levy, but the businesses in the TIF aren't contributing money to the general fund. Well, very little, under probably 1% from when they were a cornfield. But with all the development that they built, they're not contributing to the fire department that's needed in those industrial parks, the police that are needed for the increased traffic and the employees working there. The roads get plowed when it snows. That's all coming from our general fund. So we have this growth that we have to service, and we have to raise taxes in order to service that. But it's not coming from these businesses, at least for 20 to plus years. So I'm fine with this, but is there a way we can, you know how we tell the residents in their tax returns, we give them a little pie chart, this percentage is your actual village portion, which is only what, like 25%?
22 to 25. yeah.
22 to 25%, and then we show them the schools are 50+%, then you have the county. That's informational, so they get the idea that, wow, I'm getting a lot of village services for just 25%, at least I think they are. Can we show them the formula we're using, and when they ask me, why are my taxes going up, I can say, well, the growth in the TIF, we're increasing taxes. How often do we tell residents, oh, TIFs are great, TIFs were sold to us years ago that your taxes will go down and your services will go up. Well, when is that promise coming through? I can go on all night, but tonight I'm just talking about this one incident where we can show, see, homeowner, every time you saw a building go up in there, we're using that building to increase your taxes. I think it's about 2% is TIF growth, that we're increasing your taxes 2% on TIF growth. But if you can get that number exactly, I'm fine with this budget. We need the money. Our roads are crumbling. Yes, debt service is high. Dean, you said debt service is really high, but it's only $2,000 away from the increase in net new construction, which again is mostly TIF.
Yeah, but the increase in the levy is mostly through that. It's through the highest percentage.
Yeah, the debt service is
Yeah,
covered
but
by
if
the
you
TIF.
look at the general levy increase in net new construction, you're only $2,000 away from increase in debt service in the levy. So it's right there with it. They're both around 45% for the reason for the increase. And the reason our debt is high is because we need roads. Our roads are crumbling, and we're gonna have even more debt coming forward because our buildings are crumbling.
Actually, the debt is more on TIF than anything else.
The levy in here is not any TIF debt.
No, but I mean, the debt service, most of our borrowing is for TIF.
But not in.
Right, but that doesn't include it in here because that's paid for through the TIF.
Right.
But you're right, we have increased debt over time because of TIF, and the
That's
TIF
just general
hopefully
fund?
pays for it.
This is, yeah.
Otherwise, the taxpayers will be on the hook, but right now, we're doing good there, and we have someone here tonight to tell us the health of our TIFs. But I just want an informational for people, in a similar way we show them where their taxes come. They're like, how do you raise our taxes? Well, we have to raise taxes for services in TIF, and we're using the growth in TIF to raise your taxes. Whether you're for TIF or against TIF, it's a fact.
So what is your response in regards to trying to lower the levy based on any of these recommendations? No? You're fine with the budget as it stands?
I think if you find any savings at all,
It's
you
gonna
should
be
keep
small.
it in there and put it towards roads. Our roads are crumbling. We are taxing to the max.
Part of, our roads are better than they were. We've been addressing them since I've been on this board and adding money to it every year, whether it's borrowed or within the budget. Where I'm having an issue, not personally, where I'm having an issue is what we're carrying every year. Here, we're borrowing it, and then we're carrying it. And we're borrowing it, and we're carrying it, or we have some left over from the general fund. Those are monies that have already been taxed, and the money's been borrowed out and is put against the levy. And here, we're carrying 500,000 of the $1.5 million that we borrowed. That's where I have a trouble. So if we're going to put more money towards roads next year, are we going to get them done? I mean, we always seem to have an issue of carryover where we can't get the projects done, and now we carry that over. So now we've got this money that we borrowed back here that we're carrying forward again, and then we're borrowing more on top of that and carrying it to the next year. There's where I have issues. Are we over borrowing to where we have $500,000 in excess that we can't get road projects done in a season? Because if that's a fact, well, then that's a fact, and maybe we just need to keep that a little bit lower based on what we can really get done. Because I don't look at it as a bank. I look at it as money spent, money that we've asked people to allow us the approval to spend, not only for borrowing, but for as part of the general fund. That's a promise to make this happen. But I couldn't do it, so I'm going to carry it forward. But I'm going to tell you again this year for that same amount, pretty much, because we haven't not borrowed $1.5 million for, I can't remember how long, 5 years, 7 years, every year. It's been 1.2, 1 million, 1.5. I mean, it's been inking up there. And what we've done more so is we've taken what used to be comfort level about 1.5 to 2, and now we're getting comfortable at 2.5 to 3.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with it as much, so I'm looking for a way to help not only reduce that borrowing, but maybe bring that levy back so I'm not always taxing up to the amount, 2 years in a row. We've never used to go to the limit, never.
Can I ask why the roads weren't done, that we've been carrying this over?
What we just went through is,
Well,
this
is
year
there
has
like
been
a-
Some of it's, well, this year it's
year.
COVID-related and trying to get the project. It's also budget-related to try to save that money in case it was needed for shortfall of revenues that weren't coming in. So we decided not to do the crack ceiling and hold that kind of in a reserve. Other years, there's always other reasons. Last year, I know it snowed early. I mean, October 31st, we got dumped on, and it didn't stop after that.
So COVID meaning just unable to put the employees together to work on the
No,
roads?
meaning
or-
that we were, knowing that our revenues would be short, so we decided to pull some things back from the budget, so in case we didn't have those revenues to cover it, we would use these funds for that. So that's why it wasn't chosen to be used,
Yeah,
call it this year or previous budget year.
got it.
Larry?
So several things happen in a road project. We're given $1.5 million to try to use and get as close to as we can. So say, for instance, in 2020, we came up with roads, we came up with estimated budgets of what those roads would cost. And if it comes in a little bit below 1.5 million, we got all the roads done this year, and it came in a little bit below the 1.5 million. So say it came in at 1.4, at that point, you can't go and bid another project and try to use up the funds. We'd love to use up the funds. Where are you going to go in October with your $100,000 to use it up? That's what gets rolled over to the next year. So the next year, we'll try to push the road project a little bit because we know we have a little more money in there. And sometimes what happens is you estimate to have maybe more additional work like extra excavation, we call undercutting, with more undercutting in fabric and stone, and all of a sudden, it's not that high of a value. So now instead of a $1.4 or $5 million project that year, we have a $1.375 million total project that year. There's a savings due to just reduced quantities, not roads never getting done. And so that gets rolled over to the next year. 2014 or 2015, I think it was 2015, just before I got here, it went the other way.
Right.
The project went, and it was $100,000 over the 1.5 million. So if that happens, you need to have that little buffer in there so that we have the money within the road project to cover that cost. That's why I always tried to have 100,000 or so in there to have that coverage. That I don't have to come to the board and say, you know, our road program went 1.6 million this year. There's always a little bit of extra money in there. It's never that we don't get the roads done. It's just the way the bidding process and the estimating process goes. And we've been fortunate enough to come in and save a little bit of money every year, and then that builds up. You know, but it's never built up to the point of like this year where we had enough money to go and do a Lover's Lane and Century Lane at $580,000. We can throw in 2 extra roads into our road project, in addition to the Old Farm and Patton Court. So it's just a building blocks of try to get one year you get some done, what you planned on, you had a little bit extra. Either the projects went well for you, you found ways to cut the cost, save a little bit of money, and get the same product done at the end of the year. We put that into next year's. So the next year's, we may try to come up with estimates of roads at $1.6 million instead of 1.5, because we know we have the extra money in there. And that's what we did this year. I think our total bid from Pandora was a little over 1.6. So, because we had the money in there to pay that off from our little extra in the fund that we keep with it. So, if you run it real tight, if you bid out 1.5 million every year and you spend that 1.5 million every year, but the next year it comes in at 1.6, where's that come from? Police department, fire department, where do I come and ask for the money from? I try to have it in the paving program. That's what we try to do. We try to keep it in the paving program. So that's why there's always a little bit of money in there for us to have to cover the issues if they change. But the projects that we bid every year get done.
So, question, Larry.
Trustee Miller.
So, I mean, I started this with asking the question about the $1 million in that fund, and it appears now, after what I've heard, is that there's 2 reasons for it. One is because the crack seal wasn't done.
That's around 400,000 of it.
And rightfully so, you know, we all knew that wasn't going to happen this year, and that was going to be a carryover. And the second one was the legalities on Century Lane, that you couldn't do that. So that's why the carryover. Otherwise, you would have used it all this year.
There's a balance of $32,000 if you take the 588 and the 400, and you don't have, there isn't one, it's not it's not $1,070,000 left that we didn't know what to do with.
So, and I agree. I mean, our roads are probably the most visible thing that we can do for our residents. You know, that's first thing out of their mouth usually is when they're going to fix the roads. And I think we have done it as much as we could or felt comfortable with, I guess, in the past year's borrowing. I don't want to cut any of that, and I won't vote for cutting any of that.
And I agree, it doesn't make any fiscal sense to carry over capital improvements money, borrowed money. We always would try to carry over the general levy money. It's not borrowed money. We try to spend all the borrowed money. But every year you may end up with a little bit less, and then the next year you may have missed the soils or missed something, and then you have the ability to cover that cost overrun.
Further discussion? Thank you, Director. No further discussion.
Well, I just have the one thing I brought up in the committee of the whole meeting. And Park and Rec was, they're going to spend $15,000 to do a study, or spend $15,000 to redo the splash pad. If I'm going to do a study of the park, then spend the money to redo the park, I should do one or the other, not both. Either I make the decision to refurbish the splash pad, and then a year or 2 later, because once I get it refurbished, it should be good for 3 or 4 years. Once I get it done, then I can go in and do my studies the next year or the year after that to see what I'm going to do with the park. I just have a problem putting money in to do studies for the park and then putting monies in to fix it up if I'm going to make changes to it. Either I do the study and forget about fixing, or I fix it and don't do the studies for a couple more years and make the changes to the park later. I just have a problem, and I I suppose to put it on the floor, I made a motion this to reuse the 15,000, really doesn't do anything to the budget, but remove the 15,000 for the study from the Park and Rec budget. Remove it.
Motion made and seconded, and the motion is to remove the 15,000 from the capital projects fund.
No, it's remove the 15,000 that
borrowing.
Park and Rec has for the
Right.
study.
It's just in the budget, it's not a capital improvement.
Right, it's not fixing the pad, but just to do the study. They put money in the budget to do a study on upgrading the park.
Right. It shows on, what I'm looking at is page 41 of 130.
I don't have it up here in front of me.
Here.
No, Jim's getting it up over here.
$15,000's in borrowing.
Right,
Oh, it is?
To do the study, they
Right.
borrowed that?
yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of like in addition to the shelter projects. So
Oh,
it's
forget
parks.
that.
So you remove your motion?
Yeah, because I thought for sure when we talked about in and Attorney of the Whole that it was out of borrowed fund for the study.
Let me see if it's in parks.
Oh, it comes out of borrowing.
Might I ask what's it matter where it comes from?
Well, one's in general,
He's against.
You don't want to study it until
That's a
the
good point.
oh, I did, oh, we'll leave it on, yeah, but we can remove it, the only trouble is borrowing's not on the agenda tonight.
You could still,
Borrowing,
It's all-
What budget is
It's
that?
all on the budget.
it's all on
It's
the
all
agenda.
Chance to look at the borrowing.
You just haven't, right, approved the funds to go out and
First, look at it.
do
Oh,
the
that
bonding.
way. no, I agree with Dave, then, I'll leave it on, leave the motion there, and if we, one other thing we take away from the borrowing, we take away from the borrowing. One less thing staff has to look at.
Further discussion on the motion. Village Administrator.
And I believe our Park and Rec Director is on on WebEx participating, but I think we might just want to ask, I don't think it's a study of whether or not the splash pad should be replaced. I think it's more of a design of what is the splash pad going to look like and how is that going to work? And I think without the study, without that design and analysis, there won't be a replacement of the splash pad.
I don't believe it's a design of the splash pad. I believe it's a design of the entire park and the layout of the park. So we've
correct.
been getting questions and comments.
Right, it's the design of the whole park.
Correct.
But the
Yeah.
thing is, why spend the money now to fix the splash pad if you're gonna eliminate it or change it in the future?
You're not saying that you're going to be eliminated. Part of the problem, not the problem, part of the concern of the repair is because of its use.
Right, and
And some of the paint and how it's becoming an issue of probably safety or also there's aesthetics, but I think safety is in there as well. So the money is there to repair what's there, and then the study, as I understood it, and as Trustee Hudson had said, was to look at
the whole park.
the planning of the whole parks, and it doesn't make sense to move this to somewhere else, possibly. Not next year or the year after, but as part of an overall plan.
Yeah, the splash pad platform itself is chipped and peeling, and it does have cracks in the cement. So there is an element of safety. The study is more the design of the park, in that we've been getting questions about the accessibility of the park, and that you can't get there without walking a quarter of a mile in some cases to the park. That's what the study is for.
I agree.
Director Schrader, want to make any comment?
Yeah, hello everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes?
Yeah, Trustee Hudson is correct on his information, actually, President Walter as well. Two different things. The one, 15,000 is for really addressing some safety issues. The second one is really to do some, I'll call it more short and longer term planning, kind of like what we did with a 3-year process for the Clarence Park shelter building. And, we might find out that Kitterborough Park with some modifications is a good place to keep the splash pad, or we might find, when assessing the parking and some of the other amenities, that there might be a long-term, better location for it. And we have heard in some of our stakeholder meetings and some of our surveys for the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan that the residents would like to see some type of outdoor aquatic experience. So it's really two things, and I don't think we're going to be building anything new short term, but I think we need to do some study and some analysis.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor of removing the $15,000 from borrowing for the Recreation Department study, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion fails. How many ayes do we have?
Two.
Ayes, 3?
Oh, nice.
How many in favor?
One, just argue.
Okay.
8-1.
Further discussion on the resolution to approve the 2021 village budget. Trustee Myers.
I'd like to make a motion to remove, which will do nothing except for the borrowing for next year of $400,000 for Metro and Road in regard to replacement of the lights for an additional year.
That's... The Mequon Road street lighting?
Yep.
I'll second that for discussion.
Motion made to amend and seconded to remove the $400,000 from the capital borrowing for Mequon Road street lighting. Trustee Baum for discussion.
Trustee Myers, what's your thought on that? No lights, or just let what's rotting out there stay out there?
How many lights do you think aren't working?
I don't know.
Well, the issue is you can't get parts,
That's the issue.
so they have to be replaced. And We Energies does not want to own them anymore.
I'm just trying to keep the borrowing down for 1 year. It isn't going to hurt anything. And just trying to keep we keep on talking about borrowing X number amount and so on. This would bring it down for next year, 400,000.
So is there a way to keep the street lit for another year, or, I know our director of that department's not here.
This would be a project, I think staff is recommending that we go forward with it this year because of the issue with the parts. I think that if you're asking, would we be able to light the street if this is deferred a year? I think we'd be able to light the street if it's deferred a year. I guess I would also point out that if you look at our 5-year plan, the borrowing goes up in 2022 from 2021 with the new Public Works facility. So again, my recommendation would be to, both for the aesthetics, for the safety of lighting the street and the timing of the borrowing, I would recommend that that this project stay in the budget and that we borrow the funds and replace the lights in 2021.
Well, according to the We Energies that I've talked to, they have the parts, it's getting to a point where they will not be able to replace the heads, but the rest of it is fine. And so an additional year in regard, there's only one head missing out of the 36 poles that we
I think he
have.
means the actual metal part of the head, not the light element itself.
Well,
Whatever.
Dennis, it surprises me because you voted for a $1.2 million park shelter, and now you want to save $400,000 in lighting on a major road.
Further discussion?
There's no second anyhow.
Yeah, there was.
I'm
Trustee
sorry,
Baum
excuse me.
seconded.
I didn't know why you wanted to do
For
it.
discussion.
Well, that's fine.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Aye. Motion fails. Further discussion?
Do we have a motion on the floor to approve the budget yet?
Yes, we do.
We're getting there.
Bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you. Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of sneezing going on around here. No further discussion. Okay, we'll do roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Myers?
Aye.
Trustee Pieper?
Aye.
Trustee Wing? Trustee Zabel?
Nay.
President Walter?
Who said?
Side with that. Aye.
Motion carries.
On premise. That takes care of item A. Next item under new business, item B, Resolution 64-2020, resolution approving the levying of property taxes for village purposes.
Move approval as presented. Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Had it. No discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Myers?
No.
Trustee Pieper?
No.
You want to be two?
Trustee Wing?
Aye.
Trustee Zabel? Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
It's ridiculous.
President Walter?
Aye. Next item under new business is item C, Resolution 65-2020, authorizing the placement of special charges on the 2020 tax roll against certain properties.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Kim, any information? Just the
What we do standard, a lot of these charges that go onto the tax roll aren't so much as they're delinquent and not paid, as it's design that we've set up. We clear out the water and sewer billings yearly, and that process goes onto the tax roll. Is actually the amount of money they're proposing here in the backup is less than it was in prior years, and it will be less than this number on here also as we're collecting water and sewer bills through Wednesday. So that will be reduced a little bit. The other is a couple of weed cutting charges, some false alarm fees, some trash carts, and some highway fees. So this will go on to the general ledger and special assessment, and we'll collect it through the tax process.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baum?
Aye.
Trustee Myers?
Aye.
Trustee Pieper?
Aye.
Trustee Wing? Trustee Zabel?
Aye.
Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Miller?
Aye.
President Walter?
Aye. Next item under new business is item D, creation of a boardroom audio-visual special committee.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Baum.
Is there a time frame on this? That it's only a board for a year, or?
I think till March, it was originally set up to run till March, the first meeting in March.
All right, because it could change in April. Further discussion? Everybody's familiar with some of the struggles that we're having here, of course. We're not seeing the less of a need for virtual WebEx meetings. There's actually been more of a need. There also does more to bring participation of residents in, that don't want to either travel or come here. They can always join on via WebEx, as they could always watch at home, but not so much participate. So it kind of opens up that avenue as well to a more successful meeting. I know that many of us have struggled with the call it the blended meeting, where some of us are at home and some of us are here, and it's really hard when you're at home to hear what's coming out of some of these microphones. I mean, it's very, very garbled. And I've had some of that experience at the last Plan Commission meeting on Monday. It was very difficult to hear some of the commissioners. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Next item under new business is item E, appointments to the Audio Visual Special Committee. Being recommended is Trustee Miller, Trustee Pieper, Manager Tucker, Fire Chief Delane, and Dan Hummel.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
All those people up.
Anybody surprised to see their name on that list? Okay,
Thanks for not putting my name on.
good, because if you did, you missed that meeting. All right, any other discussion? Then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you all for volunteering, I appreciate that. Next item under new business is item F, we already did that one. Item G, Resolution 66-2020, extending a public health emergency declaration in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus.
Approval.
Motion made and seconded. Just to give us some background and for those that are watching of what this, what the purpose of this is, I'm going to turn it over to our village administrator as to why we're looking at extending, or the village attorney.
He said he first.
He was ready. You were ready.
I was ready. So this, just as a reminder, the emergency declaration really at this point does two things for us. It continues to allow us to utilize the WebEx platform for our meetings. It also addresses, should the need arise, the ability of the village president to issue a proclamation taking some sort of emergency action should we need to do that. We had, staff had contemplated maybe just letting it go and being done with it. In light of what I'm seeing in other communities as a result of the numbers and the hospitalizations that we're seeing now, we are recommending that you extend it at this time, primarily just because it looks like there may be some interesting stuff ahead in the coming month or two. In fact, one of our communities just today shut down completely again, and everything is going virtual. So it's, depending on staffing, depending on those other things, having that flexibility to kind of act quickly is important in this case, so.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in order, or in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item is new business item H, waste management contract for solid waste and recycling collection and disposal.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
We have all of our apartments and non-collecting all squared away finally.
Commercial properties?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, they're squared away, but did we ever get language that they get a certain rate?
Yeah, I believe it's in there. They get $1 more than we pay.
Yep, and that was actually going to be one kind of either correction, or if we can get the maker and the second to just agree to the friendly amendment. We have not yet heard back specifically on that language, other than we did hear back from Waste Management that just said that the way it's phrased raises some concerns for them in terms of wanting to make sure that it's contracting with individual units, as opposed to if, the whole complex came to them and said, hey, we want to do this. That's a different situation and something that would not be covered as part of that, which was certainly, I think, our intent. They weren't totally happy with that language, or at least the guy that we've been dealing with wasn't. Their legal is looking at it. We haven't heard back yet, so we do anticipate that there may be some tweaks to that language just to reflect that better than what it is in the current contract.
So are you saying that the rate may change?
No, the rate wouldn't change. It's just that the way it's written right now, the staff contact that we're dealing with is afraid that it's a little bit too broad in the sense that it would apply really to anybody, as opposed to the circumstance which was intended to cover, which is where you're contracting with individual units as opposed to the whole big complex. So.
Well, wouldn't they prefer, a complex of, 50, just do it all, rather than have 30 of the 50? I mean, you would almost think that the volume would be better if they were...
I don't disagree, and it would seem to make a lot of sense that if they could do it, this, part of the we're just going to bill once for the 50 units or whatever, and maybe the answer we'll get back from legal is, no, this is good. We're just based on the sole response that we got from their staff that said, I'm a little bit worried about this language.
I would feel it was the other way around. I would feel they would want the whole building to say yes or no to get that rate, but.
So,
No problem.
I'd like a hostile approval, not a friendly approval. Okay.
Further discussion? Trustee Zabel.
One of the questions that came out of Public Works was the drop-off at the site. Does that remain similar to what it was in last contract, or has that changed? I don't see it here in front of me.
It's in the first page,
No,
under following provisions.
no.
If I recall from Public Works, they'll keep the curbside pickup annually.
Right, that's what it states here.
However, the annual drop-off at the site will
Cancel,
be canceled.
but we have a drop-off where we can go to them, and we had to pay
$50.
$250 plus whatever the poundage
And
was.
right, and that's still intact where you can
I don't
still
see
drop
that.
off there at a special rate, which is in question. According to Trustee Hudson, he paid a little more than what we were supposed to, or what Germantown is supposed to
I
pay.
think I paid less.
I think you got the trustee rate.
We did.
I don't identify myself.
We did clarify that with Waste Management after the Public Works Committee meeting last week. There were several items. One was making sure that for the drop-off, that it was at that 2.5 cents per pound. The Christmas tree collection was another item, and then there were a couple of other technical items. Again, like the village attorney said, our response back from staff was, didn't see any issues with that, other than the language that was in related to the rate for apartment recycling. But he did pass that on to legal. I was hoping that we would have heard back before the meeting here tonight. We haven't. But hopefully we're able they'll get back to us very soon, and I would anticipate that all of those issues are going to be resolved as we discussed at the Public Works Committee.
So this approval is based on those conditions?
Well, that's what I'm thinking is that this goes into effect as of January 1st. Does it hurt anything to put it off till December so we get some firm answers, one way or the other?
It's a question for Larry.
We don't have the hazardous waste drop-off once a year thing like the county does, right?
No, it's all through the county.
Yeah, so the county still has that.
Right.
So that's where, I know, Art, you probably still have some political signs with lead paint.
You're right. Hand painted them.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question.
The question was, can we defer this contract for 2 weeks until the first week in December? Because it doesn't go into effect till January 1st, we get a chance to get some of the answers that we don't have tonight.
I'd have to really defer, so this contract starts January
1st.
2021.
Right.
But by signing that contract, they have agreed, Waste Management has agreed to continue the 2 months that were out of contract in 2020 at the same rates of the 2020 contract. So I think they anticipated we would be signing that very quickly here so that they knew we were going to contract with them. Otherwise, we would have gotten a different rate for November and December of 2020. We negotiated to move the contract date to start at the beginning of the year for the fiscal reasons, and by doing that, they agreed to continue 2020 unit prices as part of the new contract.
How do we, how do
would
we
say-
go with the contract if we want to make sure that we have the certain restrictions left in place, though?
Well, I think that the answer is that you approve it tonight, and if any of the things that we've represented to you are included, end up not being included because they've changed, then we would bring it back for reconsideration at the next meeting.
Okay, I would make that, do you need an amendment to the motion to do that?
Further discussion? This is a 7-year contract?
Yes.
Was the last one 7 years?
5.
And 7 years was chosen for what reason?
As we were negotiating with Waste Management, initially, the inflation factor they were looking at was 4% per year. As we had further conversations with them, we were able to reduce that basically in exchange for a longer term of a contract that they felt if they, with a range with a ceiling of 4% and a floor of 3% based on the CPI measure for solid waste disposal fees. But with a longer term contract, if there's a lower rate that doesn't quite cover all of their expenses, if it's a 7-year contract, they have a longer period of time to try to recover what that loss would be.
So the percentage of increase for solid waste disposal fees for their dump site?
For recycling and for solid waste.
They go 3%, minimum
So
3%.
out of the 7 years, I'm trying to go forward 7 years in my mind here. There have been a lot of changes in my life in 7 years from now, if I'm still here, thank God. But was there any discussion of doing like landscaping, trees, branches, grass, that leaf drop-off? I mean, Menominee Falls has that option available to use them as their drop-off site so that they're not having part of that as part of their budget. Have we discussed any part of that with them and why we're not given that same consideration? And I understand part of it is the dump site or the actual site is in Menominee Falls now, but, you know, we have a site on our property at one time, and we also have the area where they actually spread that stuff out, right, and create their covering dirt and everything else with that. So was there any opportunity to talk to them about that? Because 7 years from now, there could be a lot of changes, and possibly we'd be looking at as a budget reduction.
I'll see if Larry wants to
We
take
did
a first
have
shot at
initial discussion on that, and the representative from Waste Management basically said that because the site, their site is in Menominee Falls, they work out a different contract deal with Menominee Falls.
But don't they-
And it was like the end of the discussion.
I mean, the way
They
they're
weren't going to
expanding that
entertain.
ridge, don't they need more dirt eventually? So wouldn't they want our natural recycling materials to help generate that?
They don't really use that. They have contractors bringing dirt in that they charge them $40 a truckload for. So they make, that's a cash cow for them.
I think the concern, that the way I understood it, was the amount of traffic going through the site and having another community with that. I think if we get to the point where we were collecting in roll-off boxes and shipping it over, that might be another, I believe there'd be a charge for it, but I think that would be another approach. I think if we get to that point where we want to look at another alternative for yard waste, that
We can't look at that for 7 years.
we could negotiate a change into the contract during the 7-year period.
Is that language in here to say that we could? Oh, after 7 years, you
No,
said.
during the 7 years. If we're looking for a change in service, they would have to agree to it as well as us.
Yeah, but then they're able to change everything else and change their rate of inflation if it's higher than what they thought it would be. Because you open up the contract, you open it up to everything.
The impression that I got from them was they really don't want to stay in the market of taking in branches and yard waste. It's not something that, especially the branches and all that, they don't grind, they don't chip. Tim Zimmerman has contacts them usually every year just to see where we can get rid of all of our wood chips that we end up with our grindings. And he ends up finding a company who will take them for free. So there's just there's so much of that right now with the ash trees being cut down. The amount of wood grindings or wood chips is just burying people. They really don't want them. So the impression I got from Waste Management was in our discussion, they didn't want to discuss it. They don't want the amount of debris that would be brought to their site. They have no use for it. Branches and trees and that, they'd have to grind them. They just don't bury them. It doesn't rot away fast enough for them in their process. And also they changed this year, they're going by the CPI. Usually in our last contract, they gave us how much it went up every year. And it was a certain amount every year that it went up. This way it floats a little bit too.
Okay. Trustee Baum? Thank you, Larry.
Page 64 of 130 is the proposal summary. Halfway down the page is bulk collection. Second paragraph, in addition, the village and Waste Management will schedule an annual basis, a one-time per year curbside bulk item collection. This collection will occur over a one-week period as scheduled between the village and Waste Management each year. The annual bulk item drop-off event will be canceled due to lack of use and the ability for residents to use the landfill throughout the year. Can I use it throughout the year, or am I having the one-time curbside pickup? Is that what it is? I gotta pay for it?
You got to pay their fees, yeah.
Okay. So then we just have one time a year that they will go around and pick up anything that we put on the curb.
They still charge you though.
No,
they don't.
But don't you have to
$25 pickup.
That's the other one.
That's if you do something outside of this 1 week.
Right, that's right, Dave.
I understand.
Okay.
Further discussion? No further discussion?
No,
Trustee Zabel?
The only question I have is that, this is one of the things that I really believe you need to go out and do an RFP and get bids. I know it's easy to renegotiate contracts. You're talking about 7 years, you're talking about other things as far as picking up leaves and branches and stuff. Some of the other utility that are out there, I think if I remember right, when we were starting to look at this, I think the Village of Jackson had through their contractor where they picked up the yard waste right at the yard. They give you dumpsters to put them in and you load them up and they take them. So those things, I really think you need to look at and
We'll do that 8 years from now.
yeah, but that's just it. I mean, like you said, like Dean says, 7 years from now, what I'll be doing, I'll have no idea. Probably be taking the lead paid off of my yard sign.
So what's your recommendation then, or what are you looking?
I would have just simply said it, and I think I said it before, that I really thought that going into this contract, we should have went out and to ensure that we know there are 2 other contractors out there that would like to pick up garbage in this area. And I think it would have been I think we would have got some pretty good rates.
Further discussion? We did that how many years ago? And it all came down to tipping fees.
No, actually, it came, we saved over $100,000 when we did it, but I don't know if that was 3 years ago or 5 years ago. But when Waste Management was required to go out with bids against Avance and Johns, the bids came in a lot lower. We saved a lot of money when that occurred.
Further discussion? No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers?
Aye.
Trustee Baum? Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Aye.
Trustee Wing? Trustee Zabel?
No.
President Walter?
Aye.
You're by yourself again.
Next item under new business is item I, change order contract with McGuire Iron Inc., reduction in size of foundation for storage tank TID number 8.
Move approval as presented.
Well, we don't know the numbers yet.
Motion made. Did we have a second?
I'll second it, but we need to find out what are we talking about.
There's also some information that's come to light as per an email that was received earlier.
I didn't
Everybody
read it.
here received it from village administrator?
I didn't get it. I didn't open my emails to see if I got it.
I can give some background on this. This item was placed on the agenda as a follow-up to the conversation that we had at the last meeting regarding providing water and sewer service to the village of Richfield. Would be a change order if it's approved by the village board to reduce the size of the foundation of the new water tower that's being constructed out in the Holy Hill area. It would reduce the cost by $3,300 for that foundation, which could be built smaller if the intention of the village board is that at no point in the future would there be any consideration for constructing the tower taller in order to provide water service to the village of Richfield. I did receive an email later this afternoon. It was a follow-up to a phone call I received from Brian Kazmerzak, who owns property on both the village of Richfield side and the village of Germantown side, who offered to reimburse the village for the $3,300 if we do construct the heavier foundation, which would allow that if at some point in the future the village board did want to either during the construction process or at a later date raise the tower to a taller height, the foundation would be able to support that.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion? Comments? Questions?
I thought I heard it was 5,000.
No, it's what Larry said.
The $5,000 was an estimate, and the Public Works Director had a conversation with the contractor today, I believe, and came up with a more specific number.
During the bidding process, the design process, we knew this topic could come up, so we had our consultant engineer just sort of survey. Chicago Bridge and Iron was one, and there were 5 bids. Another contractor, it wasn't McGuire at the time, and he was just getting numbers thrown at him because they didn't have it all, designed at that point, and they were saying the most would be around $5,000, and that's what I've been quoting if people ask me. This is just a little bit less. They actually gave us the quantities of concrete, the amount of steel that it would be reduced by, and basically the labor doesn't change because you're doing the same forming. So based on the material reduction of steel and concrete, it's $3,300 credit to the tower cost.
Trustee Baum?
Larry, we have to make a final decision on the tower height by when?
We kind of made it.
So I think if the deadline was set for today to sign the contract.
Yeah.
If we were to sign the contract, we could hold off on the notice to proceed, and I could call up the contractor and just see at this time of the year how much leeway is there in time before he needs to order the steel and do what he needs to do. I haven't done that yet, so I can't give you an exact answer, but I would say a month or two may be reasonable. You're not looking at 6 months.
But they want to do some prep work this year.
Well, but that's the purpose of the foundation. They'd have to do the excavation and do the foundation. But while they're sitting there in their yard, they would start ordering in the steel that they need, and that gets fabricated.
Right. I think the more direct answer, Trustee Baum, is that we've already, I think, as a board, taken the action that we're going to take with respect to the height of the tower, which is, we have indicated that the height of that tower is going to stay only at the level that we need it, and we are not going to build it larger, because we're not at this point in a position where we can say yes to Richfield that we're going to allow that tower to go higher. What we didn't know specifically at the time last week, 2 weeks ago, I should say, when we had that discussion, was what does that realistically mean? Subsequent to that meeting, we were able to confirm that, in fact, that tower could be raised really at any point, even after it's constructed. You just basically lop off the top, you take a crane, you pull it up, and you put in the new pipe, and you set it down. It costs more money. I know that's the technical term, right? It will cost more money for Richfield to have to do that, but it is an option that they do. And so the question really was this evening, does the $3,000 or $3,300 at this point make sense to pay just to give us that option in the future should we get to that point?
To that, to extend upon that, the offer that somebody has made to pay that so we can do it, I don't think it's warranted to take that money from somebody. So if do we need to say no to them, or is there something we have to say?
If the direction from the village board is to say no, I think that's all that I would need. I do have to say, I think it's the first time in 30 years that I've had people call and offer to give the community I work for money twice in one day. But yeah, I think if the village board doesn't want to go that direction, I would just need that direction, and I can relay that to Mr. Kasmerzak.
Does that have to be a motion or what?
You already have that motion because you have the motion to approve the change order.
As is. Okay.
The change order, if you vote yes to the motion as it sits right now, means that the change order goes in, we build that platform.
As is.
No.
Smaller.
Smaller, at a
Okay.
$3,300 reduction.
That action prohibits then any further consideration at any point in the future of increasing the height of that tower.
So
Trustee Hudson?
there was discussion about not being able to do the water tower to the higher height because it was speculative in nature. How is the building a pad with the potential of selling water to another entity not speculative in nature, but building the water tower is?
So you'll recall, Trustee Hudson, that the PSC is the body that has that concern. The PSC's concern is who pays for that cost. And at this point, that cost, if you said, no, we're not going to do the change order, that cost would be recouped in one of two ways. The planned way would have been that it would have just been a cost of the tax increment district, that it would have just been paid that way instead of through the ratepayers. The alternative that is now available today is that Mr. Kasmerzak may pay that. And again, it's a source that isn't the ratepayers, the water utility ratepayers, and so the PSC doesn't care at that point.
How does that even work? I mean, how would you even set that up so that the private citizen could do that?
Yeah.
We just
And
accept it as a
specific
donation.
to it?
Right.
Oh. See how much we
And
kind of get all nervous when people offer to give us money.
You should be.
Oh, I'm always, nobody's ever offered to
But
give me money.
it's the old story, taxes are only the minimum amount that you have to pay. You can always pay more if you choose to.
You can, but basically, per the discussions, it was always more or less not now. It never said not ever, it was always not now.
What?
About offering water or making amendments to the, changes to the water tower to sell water to Richfield.
It's always been my argument that if the village in the future ever chose to do it, they can always put a booster pump on the other side of 41.
I've heard that doesn't work.
put it this way, it's done many times in many different municipalities where they boost the pressures to do and different stuff, so it can be done. I've put in booster pumps, I put in pumps that take things down, and I put in pumps that raises pressure.
What do you think, Larry?
Anything can be done once if you have the money to do it. Okay, the control mechanism that would come with that is similar to what we have right now with our auxiliary fire pump on Goldendale Road, and we have 4 buildings currently through a SCADA system, through a radio wave SCADA system tied into that in case they need their flow boosted for fire protection. Now you're talking about just domestic use, that those pumps will be running on, off, because you don't have a pressure tank. The elevated tower is the pressure tank.
It was my understanding the only reason they needed the elevator tower was for fire pressure.
No, they need the elevated tower. There's a section of the area that Richfield wants to develop that is too high for our tower height to supply them DNR regulated pressure.
So the pressure within lines would be under 45 pounds per pressure.
It'd be under 45 pounds and under 20 pounds for fire flow, which it has to be above 20 pounds for a fire flow test.
Okay.
Further discussion? Trustee Hudson.
What's the lifespan of a water tower?
Larry?
You paint it every year. It lasts you for 50 to 75 years if you maintain
Someone in
it.
West Dallas that are
Just
probably...
can't let it rust away.
So for $3,300, we get the option to do this for the next 50 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Further
It's
discussion?
not the cheap alternative for anybody who wants to raise the tower. It's
Well, it's simple, I hear. You cut it, you raise it, and you put a pipe
So,
in.
I learned something today that I didn't know. Tower 1 was done that way. Tower 1 was done, that was done to Tower 1. And I was told to go look at it by the engineer that we're using, because he did it. And there's all sort of extra steel that has to get put in the bottom cone sections for reinforcing the weak areas of the tower, because it wasn't designed for the extra weight and wind loads on it.
Makes sense. All right, any further discussion? Trustee Wing?
Well, I think it's fair to say I've been one of the most outspoken against water sewer to Richfield. But having said that, looking at a tower 50 to 75 years, I certainly won't be here. And I might, Art will for sure, but I don't know if I will. Why would I take something away from future boards that might have a total different idea than I have? Or maybe a whole community that has a different idea for the area, if someone else is willing to pay for it. I know that's always, I've heard it said before, never accept anything for free because they want something, especially in politics. But I'm willing to go along with the bigger base because I can't foresee the future.
Why shut that door? That's what I said. We said not now, when we never said not ever. Further discussion? Trustee Bone?
So why don't we build the base large enough to go 50 feet taller, so we can provide more area in Richfield?
Get the money for that? Maybe we will.
You get a plaque.
I was willing to give the $210 for a cruise.
We'd get a plaque for
But
you.
how big is too big? How big is not big enough? What do you want in the future?
When you're talking about the taxpayers' money, it's a different story. We're talking about somebody donating here.
So
That
it's
would give us an option in the future. Wouldn't give me an option, but another board in the future.
It would need an amend, either we would amend this, or we would just
Brian said we just voted
not
down.
vote for the change order, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think if what I'm hearing from at least one of the trustees is the will of the board as a whole, that the only way the 3,300 gets paid is if Mr. Kazmierzak donates the money, but if it's out of the TID, that we wouldn't do it. I think what you would want then is a motion to substitute the pending motion with a motion to deny the change order conditioned on payment by Mr. Kazmierzak within a week, or, whatever you wanted to say.
I'll make that amendment, or
It's a new motion.
we got to take action on it?
No, you're
No,
amending the
you're
order.
substituting.
So you're a motion to substitute the current motion with a motion to deny the change order contingent upon Mr. Kazmierzak paying the $3,300.
You got my motion there, Deanna?
Amendment.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded.
Are we withdrawing the first motion then?
No, you're changing it.
Changing it.
You're,
So I made the first motion, doesn't my second have to?
no,
Okay,
because it's actually a new motion.
okay. As long as we're doing it right.
Discussion on the motion.
I just want to be sure, like, what we're actually voting on right now, because we withdrew a motion, substituted a motion with a motion.
How do you understand it?
What we are voting on right now is the base. And I guess I'm just confused, like, if I vote yay or nay, what's
Right.
going to happen
So,
here now?
so we'll,
You vote yea for the current motion, then.
The current motion that that he said.
That he
in-
just made.
Okay.
Then the base will be made so that it can accommodate the higher height of the water tower, but it's getting paid for, the difference of the regular base versus the expanded base will be paid for by the gentleman that's willing to come forward and put forward that $3,300.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure what,
We get a smaller base.
Yeah.
Okay?
got it.
Larry?
Is there a time frame in which the payment has to be in?
Said 1 week.
Okay.
That's what my motion is.
I may be out of order with this question, but we're talking about the tower. We have to sign the contract, and I'm not quite sure where we were sitting. This meeting was to decide on the signing of the contract. So Attorney Sajak, can we discuss it, or where are we at with that?
well, we signed the contract. Contract's already been approved.
But we
and
couldn't
so-
sign it until tonight was the motion at that time.
Correct. We wanted to hold off on signing just in case we were going to add the height.
Okay.
We technically, at the end of last meeting, decided we weren't going to do the height, so the contract as approved is going to move forward.
Okay.
The question tonight is just whether or not we do a change order to that contract or not.
Want to make sure we were all clear on that.
Okay, further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item J, Ayler's report, tax increment financing to fund improvements necessary for a proposed development south of Holy Hill Road. Give us some more information and background on this new business item. We have with us representation from Ayler's, as Phil Cosson is here to present. Phil, welcome.
Thank you, President Walter. Steve, did you want to kick this off, or you want me to just jump in?
Jump in.
All right, I'll do so. Good evening, everyone. It's been a while since I've been here, a couple new faces. I've been asked to review, a proposal from Capstone. We'll get into that proposal in a little bit. And then also to analyze it as it fits within either tax increment District 7 or 8. And so we've run really 5 different scenarios, 1 Capstone on its own, 7 on its own, 7 with Capstone, 8 on its own, and 8 with Capstone, and I'll go through each of those scenarios for you. You provided us with the opportunity to do this first run of this, what I'll call potential TID amendment, and from this, if there's a desire to move forward, we would take it through the normal TID amendment process, but we'll get to that as we go through this. In your packet, I think you have the actual report itself. Let me walk through the actual Capstone Quadrangle Development proposal. I think we have a representative from from the company here as well. So what they are proposing is a new industrial development directly south of TID 8, so just south on Holy Hill Road. I think the land for quite some time, if I recall, was being brokered by MLG, and that's the parcel we're talking about. There's a total of 52 acres there, with about 43 acres that would be deemed as developable. So that's what you could actually develop increment on. They have provided a pretty detailed analysis up to this point already of what they anticipate could be built on the 43 developable acres, and they're identifying about $61 million of development over 7 years, starting in 2021, completing the last development by the year-end 27, and I do have a breakout of what that looks like in a little bit. So substantial development. I think it would be safe to say it looks similar to what you're seeing north in TID number 8 from a development standard, very similar to that product that you're seeing from the Zilber Group in that area. They have come back with a bit of an ask, and I'll just start by saying it's, I think, a pretty reasonable ask when you look at $61 million of potential development. They're looking for a village contribution of $2.5 million to offset some infrastructure costs. That would be monies that would be borrowed as part of the new tax increment district or amended area. That's about a 4.1% TID contribution as compared to the proposed value that would be created. They've also asked that the village look at capitalizing 3 years of interest to allow time. I've gone through that with you in the past. You know, you see a development in 21 valued in 22. The first time you see revenue is 23, and you borrow the money in 21. So you have this gap in time where you have some debt payments. So we want to make sure that there's enough time for the actual increment to be generated. So we're looking at the way to do that is to capitalize interest similar to what we did in tax increment district number 7 and TID number 8. So to provide the contribution, we were looking at both options of either amending TID number 7, and yes, we can get there. It's a little more convoluted to get west and north, but we've run through the maps, and we think we can get there and pick this area up as part of TID 7 and or TID 8, which is kind of logical directly south of Holy Hill Road to pick up this area. So the reason we looked at both options is because there's benefits in both ways, and I want to kind of talk through those in a little bit. So everybody follow that first part? On the next page is the development proposal that they have brought forward. You can see $14+ million of new taxable development by in 22 and 24, another 22.7 million, another 24 million in 27. So a pretty rapid build out of substantial sized buildings with substantial value that is being proposed for this area. Why this is attractive, if you go to the following page where it says Capstone Quadrangle projected cash flow on the top. What I've run here is just an analysis of just their development alone. And if you recall, when we do any type of industrial or mixed-use district, and this would probably fit under the industrial tax increment law, it's a 20-year maximum life. And so under that 20-year maximum life, that means, you know, we have 20-year maximum period of time where you can collect increment. And if you look at this, we think that development at the levels they're talking about, now again, you know, you can project all you want. There'll be a development agreement like we did with Zilber Group. There'll be targets that'll be required, et cetera. This district, or this project as a standalone, could pay off as quickly as 7 to 8 years. So because of that, there's value to how you incorporate this either into TID 7 or TID 8, because it's generating significant cash flow. So that's on a standalone basis, a rather quick turnaround, pretty quick payoff for their development. That's where I said, given the $60+ million in development, $2.5 million ask for infrastructure offset is very reasonable. So, on to TID 7, and TID 7 as a kind of a reminder is the J.W. Speaker tax increment district, I'll call it, and I've incorporated here a map of the area that came from the original TID plan. That gives you an idea of the boundaries for those who are not familiar. So a little bit background on TID 7 real quick. That was created back in 2017, late 2017, for the J.W. Speaker expansion. If you recall, when it first was put together, they had an initial development, and then they had a future 1 or 2 phases out in the future that they were looking at. Well, things have slowed there, and as a result of that, you'll see in the cash flow, there's some challenges with the cash flow. So that when it was developed, it was 144 acres, of which 87 acres was the J.W. Speaker expansion area. This was an industrial district, meaning at least 50% of the area has to be used for industrial purpose, 20-year maximum life. The base value when it was created was $9.3 million. The increment from their expansion, the new value is $4.8 million. So they've generated value out there of $4.8 million, but if you look at what the requirements were per the development agreement, it was much more substantial than that. And there is a development, in the development agreement, a condition that indicates that they pay shortfalls. And so if there's a shortfall in annual cash flow, on an annual basis, J.W. Speaker would be on the hook to be able to make that payment. Now, that's if you decide you want to proceed with a development agreement with that company, and I'll show you what the cash flow looks like in a little bit. So, financial analysis of TID 7 as standalone, negative cash flow with shortfalls backed by J.W. Speaker, currently no ability to really finance future TID projects in that district. And on the following page is the cash flow. And so, why it looks okay is because if you look at the fourth column from the left, and I know the type is relatively small, fourth column from the left shows you who's picking up the shortfalls. And that's per the agreement, J.W. Speaker, to the tune of, when you look at the life of the debt, over $2 million. This assumes no additional development from them. And I know there's discussions they're having about potential future expansions, but at this point, what we're using in this analysis is purely, no future expansion plans by them. It's substantial. It ends up being, upwards of $200,000+ annually that they would have to come up with to meet the shortfall payments for TID number 7. So that's TID 7 without the capstone project brought into it. So if you look at the following page, everything looks the same except for we brought in the capstone development and the capstone, the $2.5 million plus accrued or capitalized interest as part of this analysis. And what it really impacts more than anything else is it impacts, that fourth column from the left, what would be due by J.W. Speaker. Now, I'm not saying you let them off the hook. That's decisions at the board level, a policy decision you'd have to make. But what it does do is it shrinks that shortfall amount that would be due by J.W. Speaker from that $2 million number to about $280,000. So it is substantial for the company. And again, it's a policy decision where you go with that shortfall payment guarantee from J.W. Speaker. But the capstone development brought into this tax increment district provides a lot of support for that district, gets it pretty whole after the first couple of years, and it kind of resets probably the agreement with J.W. Speaker in the future and how you would approach that. So some real benefit there. So TID number 8, I'll show you what it looks like today, to date, and then with Capstone as part of it as well. We have the boundaries. I'm not, it says proposed TID number 8 because I didn't know how to get that off the map. So cut and paste, you know, the easiest solution. So TID 8 was created back in 2018. I think most folks were here for that process. The Zilber Property Group came forward with the Briggs and Stratton development, and it's kind of taken off, as everybody sees out on Holy Hill Road. 225 acres, again, zoned industrial, 20-year maximum life. The value when that district was created just 2 years ago was $640,000. It's now over almost $75 million in value. So that $75 million is probably understated a little bit because there are several buildings that are either started or soon to start that will jump that number up. We think to well over $90 million in short order. So this district is, to say the least, way ahead of schedule, way ahead of schedule from what we anticipated and what was laid out by the Zilber Property Group when the district was created. So this already has a very strong cash flow that could be available to help fund future capital projects and/or close the tax increment district out early. So TID 8 as a standalone, on the following page of the presentation, it is page 11 of the presentation, and you can see that without the Capstone development coming into this and a modest amount of future development, known projects only, you can see that at the end of the day, there's over $7 million of what I'll call increment available for other capital. Now, you have the water tower, some projects like that are on the horizon, but it's a substantial amount of increment before Capstone coming in tax increment district number 8. If it's brought in to TID number 8, that number jumps to almost $20 million of available increment in TID number 8. So more than enough to capture any projects that you have out in the TID 8 area that you haven't undertaken. You've talked about further expansion, improvements on Holy Hill Road. We have the water system out there. So there are some costs out there that I think you still have within your current project plan that have not been done to date that could be taken on. So that's the analysis that we provided. In both cases, if there's a decision that you want to pursue amending either TID 7 or TID 8 amendments to pick up this development, I think we feel pretty comfortable you can get there just from a contiguous standpoint. We can get to the property pretty easily. But I do think this really comes down to more of a policy decision. Is it best fit within tax increment district number 8 to kind of keep momentum in that corridor and finish up some projects? Or does it fit better in TID number 7 as a way to kind of assist with a underperforming tax increment district and the potential impact it could have to a local company? So that's more of a policy decision on kind of direction you can go. There is a third option, and you have this be a standalone tax increment district and have this project start and wrap up relatively quickly and close out. That's another option that you certainly have as well. Yes?
Are there any alternatives to TIF?
Certainly. You can certainly provide through a development agreement, you could provide some type of incentive if you feel this is a project that needs assistance. You certainly could provide assistance in a direct manner through the village and get reimbursed back over time. That way, that $60 million falls on the tax, on the that full valuation hits the tax rolls right away, and you get that benefit you talked about earlier of, you got to provide police, fire, and garbage collection, all that kind of stuff. So that's an option, certainly. You could do that. Another option, you could certainly come back and say, you know what, we're willing to contribute to this, but we don't want to borrow the money. We would like you to borrow the money, and we'll reimburse you back. over time, and you could do that in or outside of a tax increment district. That's certainly an option. It's going to stretch this out substantially. As you know, the power of TIF is you're using all the taxing power of all the overlapping taxing jurisdictions. If it's outside of a TIF, then you're really using that $4 per thousand, roughly, or $4 or $5 per thousand, your piece of that, to provide the incentive. So, we've run that kind of analysis for other communities.
Further questions? You know how when we develop a TIF, we'll take out certain portions of the TIF for like the administrator's pay because he's involved in building the TIF, and we take out a portion for Public Works Department, a small part of their salary, and that's legal to do. Is it possible to create a TIF, and since the snowplows go in the TIF and plow, we can figure out how much it would cost? Is it possible to capture those funds from the TIF, and instead of saying, well, 1% of the administrator's pay comes from it, 2% of the engineer, we say, well, 1% of the Public Works Department workers, their wage comes from the TIF because they're in there, or do the same with the police and fire because we can figure a percentage. Is that legal?
TIF law is pretty specific as to the charges that could be made against the tax increment district. What they'll refer to in the statutes are customary administrative costs that you can justify back against the tax increment district. Most communities choose to be very conservative in what they charge back against tax increment districts. There's been communities in the past, not of recent, I've been around a while doing this, that kind of got caught up in charging a lot of administrative costs back against districts, and then the district closes, and all of a sudden they had a significant gap in their budget to deal with. So we run into situations like that. I think it was well thought out. You could probably charge back more like Public Works, Larry's time, and that kind of stuff than you probably do. But police and fire typically not. Police, fire, those kind of services are the TIF law is specific as to the type of functions they don't want you charging back against tax increment districts.
Okay. And then my last question, and you may have shown it to us, but I haven't seen it, is if we were to go with TIF 7, what does that map look like?
Yeah, I don't have it here up. Steve, I'll rely on the person who knows the area better than I do, but we've looked at maps that we can get there.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the land has to touch each other.
Correct.
So are there, how they do congressional districts, they're kind of,
Yeah, it would look a little
it would
funky.
look, I mean, could you follow the railroad tracks and then?
No, I mean, it has to be whole parcels to be contiguous. You can't run down a road or run down a railroad track or that kind of thing. So it has to be whole parcels. But it did start south of the railroad tracks, go across, you have to help me here.
Right. And I don't have a map handy, that probably would have been a good idea, but it is possible to do it without taking large tracts of the area. There are some smaller pieces that can be assembled along the railroad tracks and then coming up from the south to that land. So in other words, like there's some larger parcels that I think are open for development, like along the Goldendale and Holy Hill intersection, we would not need to include those. There's some farm field parcels and things that we could piece together to get to that property from along the railroad tracks and coming up from the south.
Well, okay. Well, my position is I'm opposed to TIF, but thanks for the questions, and I would recommend to the board, since I know I'm the minority, that I think expanding TIF 7 would make more sense than TIF 8 to try to help out one of your struggling TIFs.
Trustee Hudson?
What's the annual revenue on $60 million property tax? How much does that bring in?
I'm going to refer to one of the charts here, but that's...
That's 30,000.
Yeah.
30,000?
On the village's share,
On the village's share, I was thinking of the,
yeah.
of the overall.
Yeah, 60 million on $5 a thousand is probably 30,000 of revenue coming into the village.
It cost us 2.25 million to get $30,000 a year, is that what it was in?
2.5 million is what the ask was for infrastructure to support that area. And if it's in a tax increment district, you're not using the $4 per thousand, you're using the $22 per thousand, whatever the overall tax rate is. I don't think I included that, but about $22 a thousand roughly, because you're including the school, county, technical college, and the village portion.
Three quarters.
Yeah, if you look at the one chart that they have with this, with itself, it says that their annual taxes in 2025 would be 255,000, of which we would be basically 1/4 of that. So you're looking at a little over $100
million at full
Right.
build out.
Yeah, when you got the full, you got the full deal, 1 million, the 250,000 would be coming into the village. But the whole thing is, and he points out, the TIF, and to use TIF is supposed to be what it developed without the use of the TIF. Now, he gave us some options, in which $2.5 million to bring in the utilities. Now, you could do that, you can assess them over a 10-year period, have them pay back that debt, and then you got the value of the property already on the tax rolls, not waiting until 2029 if you do it separately, or 2031 or 2033 if you tie it to any one of the other TIFs. The thing is, the money's there. You would have it, and you would have it in your, as you're going into budget time, you would see those dollar amounts helping to offset the general tax roll. As we pointed out earlier, they use that value for growth so that we can increase our budget, but you don't see it as part of the actual development. So, as you pointed out, if it, on a $2.5 million utility project, you capitalize it over 10 years at the interest and have them pay their assessment on a yearly basis.
Who's they?
Well, the developers that are doing there. You put the assessment against the property that they were developing.
So I don't want to speak for the developer, but they've been very good about sharing financial information, which I'm not going to divulge, but I think it'd be safe to say that they would be uncomfortable to proceed with this project without some support from the village to be able to reduce the overall cost of the development site. They just can't sell land at a high enough price to have it make sense.
What's the value of the land today? 52 acres, what's that could be sold for?
I don't feel comfortable giving that information. I think that's kind of, at this point.
What did Zilber,
55,000.
55,000 an acre?
Yeah.
That's developed with services in place.
Yeah.
Not as the land stands now.
Well, it's
What Silver what they paid.
Paid
Right.
for it. They sold it for more than that. They
Right.
sold it for, I don't remember, it's closer to 100,000 though, as I recall.
$100,000 an acre?
Right. That's, obviously improved.
Yeah, the other one wasn't.
The other question I have is the numbers at 2.5 million. Did you take in any numbers of any of the existing utility that's drawn up, the tower, the well, sanitary sewer, any of that cost associated with this thing is calculating out to TIF? Or is it just new construction at 2.5 million? Because right now the utility is picking up part of that cost for that sewer and water. And if this development is coming in, I would think they would pick up some of that cost. And I don't know if you put any of those numbers into your calculation.
The 2.5 million does not include any costs related to the tower. And that is a fair point, that if we did go forward with this, we could probably recalculate that, the portion of the tower and the well that are being paid by the tax increment district, and potentially pay
By the utilities.
for more of that out of the tax increment district and less from utilities. That would be an option. That would be an option the board would have.
Trustee Hudson?
Anybody talked with JW Speaker recently? They owe us $63,000 next year.
The village attorney and I did meet with representatives from JW Speaker, and we went through the issues, and they're aware of it. They are working on revising their plans and their timeframes, and trying to get an understanding of how that fits into the requirements of the developers agreement. And we're planning on meeting with them probably in January to get an update on where they are. The timeline kicks in, the requirements in the developers agreement kick in, I believe it was June of 2021. So we are approaching that date, and we have had conversations with them.
So they owe us the money in June? What does that mean to me?
That is when the developers agreement requires them to have reached a certain threshold of increment. And if that increment isn't there, which means that we don't generate that level of revenue for the tax increment district, then they're required to make up the difference. So it wouldn't be a situation where they owe us a check per se on June 1st or whatever that date, but that would kick in that process. So we have had that conversation and gone through that, and we'll see. Their goal is, and I think that they still anticipate that they're going to have development, and that they're going to be able to meet those thresholds, just perhaps not on the timeline that was in the original developers agreement.
So what date next year would they owe us a check?
They don't owe a check. At the end of the year, effectively, what happens is we send a bill to them, typically along with the tax bill, that just says, here is your differential payment. This is what you should have been paying based on what the assessed value should have been versus what it actually is. You calculate that out, and this is what you owe us. And so it's typically, yes.
But it's up to all, it covers the increment for all the taxing districts, not just for ours.
Correct. For the TIF fund.
Right.
It really goes to the TIF fund.
Pronoun usage, excuse me.
And that is just to reiterate one of the points that Mr. Costin raised, is that if first of all, if the village board does want to move forward with this, it creates some flexibility and some options for you from a policy perspective, either in TID 8 or in TID 7. In TID 7, it does create a lot of flexibility on how you want to approach both the cash flow issues there and future development. And I would say in both of those cases, both in TID 8 or TID 7, if you would use either one, it does also achieve the goal of closing the TIDs earlier, so that that gets on the general tax base. And I think that's one of the things that's important to point out, that the Village of Germantown, the village board here, has done with tax increment districts that a lot of places don't do, is you've taken some very conservative approaches towards not using the full lifespan of the tax increment district. And, you have 20 years, but in all these cases, we're looking at paying them out, closing them out, paying off all the debt, several years earlier, which is beneficial for the school district and the county and all the other taxing jurisdictions, as well as the general taxpayers who see that bump into the tax base, like when we closed tax increment District 4 last year, and the taxpayers and the other taxing jurisdictions saw that benefit on their tax bills.
Trustee Myers?
Steve, I was going to ask you, when, for TIF 8, when is the call period for that? Because you just can't, there's a penalty, isn't there, if you try to do that too soon?
There is a call period on the bonds. You wouldn't necessarily have to call the bonds. I think we did that with TID 4.
We did.
But there are, and Mr. Costin can explain that better than I can, but there are other ways to close TIDs, even if it's in advance of the bonds coming to maturity.
You create an escrow. You could close the district out after the escrow is in place, and the escrow essentially pays the remaining bonds until the call date, and then you're able to use the rest of the money to pay it all off. So there's a way you can do that.
And TIF 8 was for a 10-year, wasn't it?
Well, TIF 8 was a allowed 20-year district.
That's a 20.
And so we're early in the process of that district. I mean, it was just created 2 years ago. But it's ahead of schedule substantially.
All right, so it could close early.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go out to the full 20 years. It could be 15, depending on whatever board is in place, and they decide that they want to take that and close it at that time if it's covered its increment. Looking at the scenarios that have been presented, I agree, first of all, with Trustee Wing that TIF 8 doesn't need help. It's successful, it's ahead of itself, and we hope that it continues to do so, but it's strong enough in cash flow to help cover what has been promised in regards to its borrowing. Capstone alone, as its own developments, can stand on its own. It doesn't need the support of any of 8 or 7, really, because it's a strong enough development as it's presented to pay back its increment quickly. TIF 7 needs help. It's the one that's looking at the possibility of not hitting its increment. They're hoping that they will. They're looking at ways to help to arrange that, but projections within the next 6 months aren't any different than what we see today as far as growth. And if they're struggling a little bit now, I don't know how much will change. I hope it does, and that they come to what they think they're going to get. But I think this opportunity of Capstone helps us to support that and bring it along so that it can not only cover its increment, but close it earlier.
So you're thinking about putting 7 and 8 together?
No. I'm
Okay.
thinking of putting Capstone and 7 together. Would be based on what's been shown to us and each of the different 5 scenarios and what we know about 7, that one makes the most sense to me.
Because that's a big difference, as Phil had mentioned, of the difference between 2 million and 280 million, or 280,000, excuse me. That's a heck of a difference that the speaker is gaining in the process of that.
Gaining?
Yeah, they don't have to spend that money.
A shortfall.
Well, no,
There's still an agreement in place, though.
Right.
That would require, the agreement is for their parcel. I mean, so the agreement, there's, the village attorney can speak to it, but you have a specific agreement with JW Speaker. They're going to have to pay shortfall payments unless they see development or the agreement is renegotiated or changed. They're still going to have to see that. What I'm showing is just from a pure cash flow, how much better that district looks. And one option would be to maybe modify the agreement with JW Speaker or delay it or give them more time. I mean, it gives you some flexibility.
Okay, that's the difference from what I understood in regard to that. Thank you.
Trustee Baum, you know a village attorney first? Okay.
Who's got the mic?
Yeah, I have the mic.
Oh, I
I stole it. It's mine. Phil, this is a question obviously we could talk about individually, but I did just want to raise it just because it's something that I've at least talked to members of this body about in the past. I'm looking at these numbers and I'm thinking that even if you add it to 7, there's the possibility that you maybe split the capstone development into TID and non-TID components, so that you only take what is the bare minimum to cover the costs, and maybe help out 7, and then leave some of it on the general fund. My question for you would be, what in your experience would be the better way, either timing-wise, as we're looking to put forward our schedule, or just in terms of the mechanics to accomplish that? If you're talking 3 buildings that are north-south, for example, each in an individual lot, are we better off having those 3 lots kind of split out in advance, or can we come back and modify the TID afterwards to take area out to do that? What's the best way to kind of accomplish that?
Well, you described it right. I think the plan now, it could change with one big user coming in or whatever else, but the plan right now is 3 buildings going from east to west. So logically, you could certainly pick up one slab, I'll call it, versus the whole area. That's certainly an option. Our preference, if at all possible, is to just pick up an area that you want to include in the district and leave out the rest, as opposed to going back and removing property. That's a more convoluted, challenging process. It's about a 1.5-year process to go through with the DOR to get it recertified. It's just not a fun process to go through. So if there's a way to work with the developer, if that's the goal, is to pick up some of the development as part of TID 7. The rest would stay outside of TIF. You work with the developer and see what that would look like, to give them flexibility to make sure they get the development site they need to make this work as well. But that would be our recommendation.
Is there representation from the developer here?
Right there.
So you've heard some of the discussion, and I've heard it been said out loud that you wouldn't be open to something outside of TIF? What about the blended, I'm going to call it blended, I don't know why, proposition that would be, some of it would be within TIF 7 and the rest would be call it, I don't know, a standalone? Not a standalone TIF.
Non-TID, I think.
Right,
is what
non-TIF.
was being referred to.
Where the village would still be looking at at financing the incentive possibility that you're requesting and see what that looks like, but not the whole portion of what your development is would be within a TIF. We would create a TIF, maybe expand TIF 7 to help support it, and then the rest could be a non-TIF area, but with maybe some incentive agreements if the board would so choose.
I'm open to considering those kinds of ideas. That specific concept had not occurred to me.
Welcome to Germantown.
Thank you. One of my concerns would be, as long as the village has the flexibility, I'm not a TIF expert, but as long as you have the ability to spend TIF dollars within a half mile of the TID boundary, then I don't immediately see a problem with that concept. Some of the infrastructure that makes up the 2.5 is on both ends of the property. I'd want to get my advisor, my legal counsel's understanding of whether there's implications I wouldn't have thought of, but conceptually, I certainly see the appeal to the village of some portion of, what would otherwise be increment, be able to help your general fund immediately as soon as development happens. As long as it's not a negative to me, I'm happy to cooperate with that kind of idea.
And there's opportunity in ways that could be financed in regards to special assessment or just separate bonding, correct?
Well, I think, and maybe just to summarize for folks who might be listening at home too, but I think where the conversation is going is that there is a third option that would be available if we want to try to use the cash flow to help TID 7. And that would be, there's, in the preliminary site plan anyways, there's 3 buildings. We could draw the new boundaries so that we're including only one of the buildings or maybe 2 of the buildings in the tax increment district. And that would give us enough of a cash flow to pay the debt on the $2.5 million in improvements that Capstone is requesting, and would help with the cash flow for tax increment District 7. But would also leave, like, either 1 or 2 of the 3 buildings would be outside of the tax increment district, so that when they were built, they would go directly into the property tax base and benefit the other taxing jurisdictions. And the residents would see that impact on their a positive benefit on their property taxes.
Did I understand, though, that TID boundary has to be on whole property parcels?
You have to subdivide it. It would require a subdivision of the property.
That would be the challenge, I think, from a development standpoint.
Yeah. After the fact, easily accomplished. Before the fact, you can't build a building across property lines. So if the users that come forward in the marketplace don't fit where that line was drawn, there's a lot of time that potentially kills the deal in order to restructure to accommodate the different deal. I feel good about the site plan that we've said is our preferred approach, and we feel the most confident that that fits what we expect to be out in the marketplace. But I don't have a crystal ball. No one does, of course.
Now, some developers have like one business in mind to start, and then the rest is they need to be flexible because, what else is going to come. So if you start with one that we know the structure of that building, could we not make that the parcel that's outside the TIF? It would assume that you have one right from the start.
I don't have one in my hip pocket.
Okay.
I like to, but at the moment we have a prospect for one of the 3, and it sounds like it would be a good fit, but I don't think it's cooked far enough along. In general, it really helps. Most businesses tend to procrastinate and make a decision when there's almost no time left. And so having everything in place, what we like to call pad ready, the infrastructure is already built for the stormwater ponds, the road, things are in place, then it's no longer just a farm field, and they'll take it seriously and give it serious consideration compared to, the next business park in the next community. I've experienced that many times. Being pad ready is so believable, but the cornfield, it's just an idea. Sometimes they're under enough pressure, though, that they have to look out far enough because what they need just isn't readily available to them. So that's what I'm hopeful about this first prospect that we've already identified, even though we haven't announced this to the marketplace. I've got a broker starting to work on putting marketing materials together, but I'm encouraged by where our projections are about the industrial market in general, over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm very optimistic and frankly bullish about it.
Yeah, that's good.
Trustee Baum?
Do we think this is not going to develop unless we contribute to the projects? So if we don't contribute to this, nothing is going to come in behind it?
Well, that's the blood for you.
That's...
The but-for test is not technically required of industrial TIFs, but I can tell you, I shared our confidential pro forma with the staff and your consultant, and I don't mind telling you that if you take all my costs, which your consultant can tell you looks reasonable, like these are realistic numbers, and then I assume even an aggressive price per acre that I think I can sell these, this land, pad-ready, teed-up, ready-to-go land into deals, I don't even break even. I'm a slight loss. No one in their right mind is going to do that. I would love not to have to come and ask for TIF support. And in fact, frankly, I understand what happens here because I sit on the City of Brookfield Community Development Authority, and the primary purpose for Brookfield's CDA is to review TIF requests. But what I face as a developer is that all of the other communities support all of my competitors with TIF, and so that allows them, since so many communities do TIF, that's what I have to compete with. And the users are going to look at it and say, well, why would I pay you $250,000 an acre? I can go get land for 125 or 150 from these other guys. I can sit there forever. No sensible business person would go into a deal knowing that you can't compete with your competitors.
And
So if you say, we can't support, we're not willing to support this at all, for me, I'll have to terminate my purchase agreement with the land seller. But I also would strongly suggest industrial development of a Class A business park won't happen there unless the marketplace changes. And that would kind of be a shame, not just for me, but for you, if that's your vision, that's my understanding, your vision here matches my vision, we've got a window of opportunity where industrial is going to be strong. It would be a shame if we don't realize our joint vision and miss that window and end up where retail development or office development is today, which is kind of in the toilet.
Right.
Just my observation.
And the $2.5 million, you're saying you're short the $2.5 million. What does $2.5 million in this development buy? Does it buy
Sewer, water,
the,
roads.
what?
Sewer, water, and roads, I'm assuming.
Three things, really.
And storm sewer.
Stormwater ponds, the public road, and some environmental cleanup and demolition of existing problems on the site.
Where's the public road?
It starts at the intersection of your Gateway Drive, that is the Zilber development to the north, and runs directly to the south. And on that topic, to address Trustee Wing's earlier question, one of the things we tried to do was make this as community-friendly as possible. So I've proposed to Administrator Cricklow that even though this would be public land, you wouldn't have to do the snow plowing. We'd do all of the maintenance, both, seasonal and repairs.
So
On the road.
you got the three buildings. On the eastern end is a road that's coming in. That's actually a road?
And in the middle,
Okay, there's the one in the there's two of them. There's one in the middle between buildings 2 and 3, 3 being the western building.
right?
And then there's what, I guess it's a parking lot then, that's on the east end.
Yeah, that would remain private.
That's private. So you're saying that this whole thing would be your responsibility to take care of and maintain?
Correct. Stormwater ponds, the roads, even the public right-of-way for the main north-south road.
Okay, so is it possible that our water utility pays for the water and sewer going in there? And comes out of their budget?
You wouldn't do it that way, but what I was thinking, your 2.5 million, that's what my question was before. I'm assuming sewer and sanitary sewer and water is calculated in that number, besides the stormwater and,
No, the individual buildings would pay their fee to
To bring their own utility
extend
in?
and tap into your.
tap into the main line, because the main line must be there someplace.
Your main would not be extended, there would be no public main into the site.
Into the building. See, I don't have a map, so it's hard to visualize what's here, is where that property lies and how it fits in. But we have sewer
West
and
of-
water now.
A water roll, and it's south of the development that's there.
Right, but it's all south. I thought of water and sewer all ended at Gateway Road.
I think that's correct.
So you're actually developing west of Gateway.
South.
Only one of the three buildings is west of Gateway.
So someplace along the line, water's going to have to go down Holy Hill, and water and sewer's going to have to go down Holy Hill.
Well, for my plan, the western building would tap at Gateway, and my expense to run it further along.
So you're just basically putting a lateral into your building.
Yes, correct.
So, right. So then again, what my option of talking earlier, the 2.5 million, we could borrow it, we could do it, but what, would you have a problem with doing that? And then we would put you on an assessment roll and have you pay over 10, 15 years to pay that back instead of doing a TIF?
Bill talked about
I'd
You'd have to look at the numbers.
The
to see what
financial
they-
impact to me is the same. I don't care what the format is.
Right. I'm just trying to,
I'm happy to,
I just, again, the TIF, when you start thinking TIF, and you do
Won't
it,
be
and
the
I'm
same.
sure, like you say, if you're sitting on Brookfield, if they want to do it, the revenue numbers are there and the time frame in which they get there and how you use it. It just,
The financial is not
Financial
the,
impact, it
right.
won't be the same, because the TIF is paying the 2.5 million in one scenario, and then next scenario, you're paying it.
Over
It's
10 or
just over
15 years.
10 or 15 years instead of
yeah,
1 year.
yeah, but again, we have the value of the land sitting on our tax.
No,
rolls.
I understand what you're saying, I'm all on board with what you're saying, but when he commented that if the financial impact's the same, I don't have a problem with it, the financial impact's
It's
not
not
the
the
same.
same.
And just to clarify, because under that scenario, the property owner would be paying the full amount of taxes on the $61 million worth of development, just like they would on the TID, but then in addition to that, they would be
Assessment.
paying the assessment on the 2.5 million.
yeah.
So it would be beneficial for the village, but I don't think that the developer would agree to that.
I think it's a good idea.
And that's why you're not a developer. What do they need from us tonight?
At this point, this was the feasibility study that the village board approved. And the second phase of this would be to initiate the approval process. So what we need from the village board is direction to move forward with, to begin the approval process for either TID 7 or TID 8. And again, it's not approving it, but it's authorizing Ehlers and staff to move forward with that process.
Trustee Baum?
Did we not in the past use money from one TIF to put it over into another TIF?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately.
The laws have changed.
Laws have changed.
There's
Change
significant
it back.
restrictions on what type of districts can be recipient
Yeah?
districts. Unfortunately, 7 and 8, the two districts we're talking about here, or if this was a separate district, would not lend themselves to be a recipient. The type of district, how it's created, has to be a blight or rehab district. None of your districts that remain right now fit that category, so that's not an option.
Didn't, the developer said he had some lands that he had to clean up?
Yeah.
What, in regards to brownfields, or just because there's stuff on them?
I gotta take a house down.
Both within the buildings and in the ground.
It's got to be 50% of the area to meet that criteria.
Okay, so when they changed that law and wouldn't allow one TIF to be borrowed from another, didn't they also add some sort of provision that if your TIF was considered distressed, that you had an extension?
Yeah, that law is sunset.
Okay.
Well, you're taking away all of our. Man.
One last question for the developer. You had mentioned that you're bringing a road in, and you said you'd have one building on one side and the other two on the other side, or is the plan? And then we were talking earlier about, well, how would we divide that? How would that look like? You need the flexibility, you need to be pad ready. Wouldn't the road already be created before you totally knew your flexibility? So could we not make that dividing point the road?
I think that would probably work if that was,
I mean, you choose where you want the road, it comes in before you might even have businesses in mind, and we just divide the road. On one side, it's TID, and on the other side, it's non-TID.
But how does the TID look? Does it group with 8? Does it group with 7? Does it stand alone?
Well, I go with 7. If I was you,
Thank you.
I would.
I understand your position.
With 7, because it has problems, it's struggling. Wouldn't you prefer a community that you say, hey, all our TIFs are strong?
Yes.
I don't want to come forward and say, well, we have a TIF here and it's really struggling, and no, you need to beef that up.
Right, and it's not to the point of where we look at it as struggling, but it has that possibility. And that this is a vehicle that to help support that, but at the same time to help it close early.
If you have the ability to close a TIF early, can I move money to 7? If I were to do this all in 8 and get 8 to close out really early, I would now have proceeds from TIF 8, that could then be funneled back into TIF 7?
I'll take the first shot at that. I think after the TIF closes and the final distributions are made, that money comes into the village's general fund. And you can support, if there's cash flow issues with the TID, you can transfer money from the general fund. But the problem with that is that would not take place I don't know what the earliest possible closeout is for TID 8, but I think it would be too late to assist with any cash flow issues that we might potentially have with 7.
Best case, I don't think you're closing TID 8 for another 12 to 15 years.
Yeah, good.
With the debt, just with the obligations you have outstanding already, that you've taken out there, even though you're ahead of schedule, and it's due to close early, but it's going to take a little bit of time to pay off those debt obligations. So it's going to be another 12 years or so.
Trustee Miller?
Yeah, I do have a question on TID 7 and what the advantage is of putting this parcel in TID 7. And the question I'm asking is because we have, I'm not trying to be crass here, but, you know, we have a shortfall payment from J.W. Speaker, right?
Yeah.
That if we do nothing with it, that they have to pay. So is there an advantage of adding this to 7?
Do they have to pay?
To the village of Germantown? I mean, is it just because it could close earlier?
Yes, as part of that answer, and secondly would be to help support and guarantee that.
And this, I know this is worst case scenario, because Speaker most likely will develop some more.
They have opportunity to change things there. I don't know, they've got that property out to the side, but they swore at the time that we were going through approvals that they would never sell that, but they could.
Sure.
And they could sell it to a developer that would put a building there for industrial or warehousing, or they could sell it to a residential developer. Now we would have a TIF with a residential component to it. It would be due for us. We've never done that.
It'll have to be approved, though.
The other answer is that obviously with any agreement, enforcement of that agreement becomes challenging where you have a party that is just unable to perform. And if Not that, certainly, we didn't get that sense, I don't think, when we met with them, but in the event that JW Speaker was in significant trouble, which I don't think they are, but if they were, then you wonder even long-term about your ability to even collect those shortfall payments. So
Well, this would
anything
strengthen
we can do to just help give us some cushion, I think helps.
And I think it also gives us some opportunity to look at TIF support for other infrastructure that we want to put in that area. And some of that could be, depending on how this is put together in contiguous land, that could be, what do you call it, Retzloff Way? Which is the frontage road from Holy Hill down to Freistadt. So, it opens up those possibilities of what that TIF could cover and what the board would be willing to look at as part of that cost. We know that development is strong in this area. The projections that Mr. Costin showed us, of course, as Ehlers has always done, are very conservative. And a proof in that is what you see is happening in TIF 8. He said it's above expectations based on what their projections were at the time that was approved. So this particular development gives us some opportunities to help support, but also open up other areas for some things that we're looking to do. And I know your argument, because we don't have a plan, but it could be introduced into the plan.
No, it's not my argument. My argument is, so Wetterall's next. Are you going to expand 7 to put his property in?
No.
Then the people east of Goldendale, north of Holy Hill,
We own some land back there.
are next, and they're going to want a TIF. When does it stop?
You want my honest answer? Never.
Never.
And it's for the reason that he just said.
Yeah.
Which is that in today's market, and this is not a Germantown unique thing, this is
No,
something
it's everybody.
we see in every one of our communities, even though both Jesse and I both detest the use of TID in the same way that a lot of you do, for the same reasons, is that it changes the market. And the reality is that if we don't do TID, we don't develop. They skip over us, they go to Jackson, they go to West Bend, they go to Slinger, they go to, wherever the next spot that they can get land cheaper is. And that's the reality, because if we can't subsidize the development such that they can sell the land for the same price that they're going to be able to buy it for in a community that also subsidizes their development, then you're not going to develop. And maybe that's fine, and maybe you're just comfortable with the fact that you're not going to grow, and that's obviously a policy decision that needs to take place and happen, but that's the reality. I mean, we see it.
I agree with everything you said. The only thing is, we're told that this growth leads to better services and lower taxes. Show me where growth has led to better services and lower taxes, because the farther out I go, the taxes are cheaper and the quality of life is better. And the closer I get to high growth, the quality of life goes down and the taxes go up and the schools get worse. So I agree with everything you said, but your last point, is that what you need? Somebody has to show me taxes going down. We just raised them 6% tonight, and we're doing TIF, 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 TIF. Done TIF for 30 years. When I was young, the buildings weren't crumbling, we weren't in debt, the roads were smooth, and parks were free. Then TIF comes along. Now I'm paying $5 to get into
At
the
a
park.
population of 2,500.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, growth. Growth didn't result in something positive.
Grow based on its proximity to Milwaukee. It's all location.
And the subsidies.
Germantown, remember when we did that survey of what the majority of residents in Germantown want? Is this what they wanted? They wanted more places to eat and shop. Am I wrong?
There was a question about bringing in more restaurants, and.
No, the question was the survey results that we just got back, that we went over, and what the majority of Germantown residents want. What do they, like, what do they want in
That's what some
addition?
wanted, but you're going to get a whole vast majority on the north side of Freistadt that want rural too, that want
Yep.
nothing. You get
I'm
a,
just saying that if,
Right, there's competing interests. The honest answer, I mean, at least if you buy what all the market surveys and everything say, is that the only way we get new restaurants is if we increase our daytime population, i.e. commercial and industrial development, because
don't we
that's
have
what
how many people
drives
working in
that
Benson
type of
Stratton?
development.
That's the problem. If we're going to develop this land and we're going to put in 44 jobs in 750,000 square feet, this doesn't help Germantown.
He didn't say-
It doesn't help Pick and Save on Mequon. It doesn't help the precinct because it's not bringing the jobs.
He was talking industrial, not warehousing. Correct? It was industrial?
It's hard to predict exactly. The one user that I have interested is manufacturing. But until it's, real deals and they're willing to sign on the line, generally we predict, that it's a 50-50 mix.
Between industrial and warehousing?
Well, to me, they're all industrial, but it's whether it's bulk distribution or like assembly or manufacturing, office warehouse combinations, anywhere from 10% to 30% office. You can also have R&D components that are much higher jobs,
So,
heavier build out and more value.
If you can't answer the question, that's fine, but with this prospective development you've got, how many jobs are we talking about?
He doesn't. He doesn't even have a tenant.
Take a guess, but I can't, I'm not good enough with, I use my computer calculator too much right now to handle it.
And I guess one thing I would add just about the jobs, though, and when we talk about the TID 8, and the initial development there did have, it was only 44 jobs for Briggs and Stratton, but that did also, the creation of the infrastructure also led to Dielectric coming in and Illings Corporation, and I forget the name of the other occupant of one of the Zilber buildings.
Smart Warehousing.
Smart Warehousing. They moved from their location in Germantown. If that location had not been available, when a business moves, there's no guarantee they're going to, they may not have stayed in Germantown. They may have. But again, if that site wasn't available, I don't know where they would have located in Germantown.
At the growth rate that they want.
So, I mean, there are several hundred jobs that are up in that business park. And there's more development that I think will occur there.
So,
I don't mean to beat you up, but some of those jobs are jobs that were in Germantown and they simply moved from one location to another.
So it was,
That's not a net gain, that's not growth.
it's an avoidance of a loss. This is the way I would probably, I don't mean to be argumentative, but, yeah.
Oftentimes when businesses move, even within the same community, they're improving their efficiency and their employee per square foot or their total square footage will increase 10, 20, 30%. It's one of the most common reasons businesses relocate is they've outgrown their space and they need more. And so most communities tend to want to keep the businesses that are in the community, and most businesses want to stay where they are because they've attracted employees based on travel patterns that they know they're afraid they're going to lose a lot of their employees if they relocate too far away. But on the point you asked about the number of employees, even though I don't have a good answer for you, we have assumed, and if you look at the site plan that we've put forward, we put in enough parking to assume 15% of the square footage is office space. So we've tried to put in enough parking to be able to handle a lot of, passenger automobiles. Industrial buildings need to be able to handle semi-trucks too, but we don't want to lose the opportunity because those buildings have more value for us if they have a heavier employee count office space. So
So in a 250,000 square foot building, that's
And you typically assume 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of space. That's the sort of rule of thumb for office space density.
All right, we need a direction.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Or, you want a motion?
There's no motion currently.
Do you want one?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we add the capstone development to TID number 7.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Pretty well had it.
That's a big step. I didn't expect it to.
No.
We have to, we're not approving a TIF.
Right, I
We're
know,
asking
I know.
for Ehlers to give them a direction
Right.
to move.
I would just like to add, could we, the idea that was kicked around of partial non-TID and TID, and now that we established there will be a road, I would just like that to be included in the,
And that
That's
analysis.
possible, right, Phil? Okay.
I'll let,
yeah, what is that, like the minimum
And I don't-
amount?
And I'm not against that at all, Dan.
I'll add
But I
that
mean,
to my
we
motion.
can talk to this for another hour easy, because there's a lot to talk about, but we also have to provide a direction for Ehlers so that they know what direction we'd like us to move, and then they, at the same time, to show us those options, which I'd be interested in very much.
Okay, so I'll add that to my motion.
All right?
That's good with me.
And that's all right with the second?
Yep.
All right, further discussion. And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Not opposed? Did you oppose, Art?
No, I'm waiting for the study, then I can.
Okay,
oppose it.
then you can oppose.
Yeah, first.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, for the information and for the input, and for staying with us. Next item under new business is item K, 4-lot certified survey map of outlot number 4 in the Woodland Ponds Estates subdivision. David Lisinski for Germantown Acquisition LLC, property owner, 4.58 acres, Wasaki Road and Elm Lane.
Move approval. Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion. Trustee Baum.
Have we resolved all the outstanding issues with, this is part of the other subdivision, it's following the rules of the other subdivision? Did we get all that ironed out on this?
We got an explanation for Mr. Lisinski. Yes. So he has some of the, call it the previous development is part of the subdivision that's just to the west, and I forget the name of it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Then those are those 3 lots that are kind of on the other side of that, I don't know, ditch line.
Harvest Hills.
Thank you. And then he has made a statement that his association covenant is the same as Woodland Ponds, though it's not part of. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I think the new part that's towards Elm Lane is its own.
Right. The issue, I think, if I recall, was that the one subdivision was kind of angry that they weren't participating and being part of the actual association, with the idea that there were going to be these new lots that could then be used to offset the costs of, maintaining the stormwater ponds and that kind of stuff. I don't know where they ever got that idea. That was never the intent, certainly at least as we had always discussed it, because the flip side then wouldn't be true, that the existing subdivision wouldn't be sharing in the costs of the, wetland, the stormwater ponds and those types of things within the new subdivision. And so it only went one way, which didn't make any sense, and I don't know that any developer would do that unless the developer owned both subdivisions and it was just an extension of an existing subdivision that they had planned. But in this case, the covenants match in the critical aspects, at least, the respective subdivisions to the north or to the west.
So one.
Yellow one on there is standalone?
Further discussion, in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item is item L, amended development agreement for outlot number 4 on Woodland Ponds Estate.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And we made it by 10.
None opposed? Motion carries. Takes care of all items on tonight's agenda under new business and all items on tonight's agenda. Before we adjourn, the next regular village board meeting will be on Monday, December 7th at 7 PM here at the Village Hall Boardroom and also accessible via WebEx. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching. And until December 7th, have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Good night.
It's all, folks.